Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in to Wide Awake Horror today. Today we've got some true horror stories for you guys to hear. Now, if you enjoy these stories, as always, please smash that like button. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the family. Now, let's enjoy some new stories.
I almost didn't go. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. If my phone battery had died earlier, if I hadn't been bored that week, if I hadn't swiped right at 1:30 in the morning because she had that half smile in her third picture that looked real and not staged. Her name was Alina. She had 5 pictures. One in a hoodie on a balcony somewhere downtown, one at the beach, one blurry mirror pic, one with her dog, and one that looked like it was taken without her knowing, like someone caught her mid-laugh. That one is what got me. We matched on a Tuesday. By Thursday, we were planning to meet at this place called Lantern House, this low-key ramen spot on the edge of the city near the old train station. It's not fancy, but it's dim and kind of cozy, red lights hanging from the ceiling, cracked tiles in the bathroom, that kind of place. We agreed on 7:30. The whole day I felt weird, not nervous, just off. She'd been texting kind of fast at first, then suddenly she went quiet around 4 p.m. I figured she was busy. Around 6:45, she sent one message saying she was already there and grabbed the table. Already there. That was my first tiny red flag. Who shows up 45 minutes early to ramen? I got there at 7:25. It was colder than I expected, and the street outside Lantern House was pretty empty. The train station across the road looked half dead, like nobody used it anymore. A couple of flickering lights inside. I remember thinking it felt like the kind of area where nothing good happens after dark. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not empty, but quiet. Maybe 5 tables had people. A couple on the left. 2 guys in suits near the window. And then, in the back corner, near the red lantern with the cracked glass, I saw her. And I saw him. She was already there, leaning forward in her chair, arms tense on the table, arguing with someone who looked exactly like me. Not similar. Not kind of. Exactly. Same black jacket. Same stupid crease in the left shoulder from where I always sling my backpack. Same messy hair I tried and failed to fix before leaving. Same jawline. Same scar near the eyebrow from when I fell off my bike in middle school. He was facing her. I was seeing the side of his face, but it was my face. My first thought wasn't that it was a twin or some prank. My first thought was that I was still outside, that I hadn't actually walked in yet, that this was some reflection trick from the window. But the angles were wrong. The lighting was wrong. He moved his hand. I didn't. I froze by the entrance, half hidden behind one of those wooden dividers with fake bamboo. I could see her clearly now. She looked annoyed. Her cheeks were flushed. Her hands were moving fast, like she was trying to explain something. I couldn't hear what she was saying, just a low, sharp tone. He leaned back in the chair. My chair. The exact posture I always sit in. One elbow on the table, thumb against the chin. He tilted his head slightly, and it was like watching myself in a delayed video. That's when he turned a little more toward me, and I saw my own eyes staring at her. There was no glitch, no distortion. It wasn't like looking in a mirror. It was like seeing a recording of myself sitting there in real time. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. My brain kept trying to solve it logically. Maybe it was someone who just looked a lot like me. It happens. There are lookalikes, but not down to the scar. Not down to the way his lip curls slightly on one side when he's annoyed. Alina suddenly stopped moving. She stared at him. Then she did something that made my stomach drop. She slowly turned her head and looked directly at me. Our eyes locked. Her expression changed instantly. Not surprise. Not confusion. Fear. Real fear. She looked back at him. Then back at me. Then back at him again. He didn't turn around. He just stayed facing her. My brain finally kicked into survival mode. I stepped backward, almost knocking into the hostess stand. The girl behind it looked at me weird, like I was some awkward guy who forgot something. I stepped outside. Cold air hit me. I stood there on the sidewalk, trying to breathe normally. I told myself to leave, just leave. This is insane. This is some weird coincidence or prank. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Alina. It said, "Why are you pretending?" I stared at it. Another message came in right after. "Stop doing this." I typed back, "I just got here." The typing bubble appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Across the street, the old train station lights flickered off. I don't know why I looked back through the restaurant window. I guess I needed to see if he was still there. He wasn't sitting down anymore. He was standing, facing the door, facing me. I swear to God, I hadn't moved for at least 10 seconds, but when I looked in, he was already up, already halfway to the entrance. The door opened. He stepped out. And that's when everything went completely wrong. Because when he stepped outside, he wasn't wearing my jacket anymore. He was wearing a gray hoodie. The same gray hoodie from Alina's balcony picture. My stomach flipped. He looked at me directly. No hesitation. No confusion. Just this calm, almost bored expression. Up close, it was even worse. Every tiny detail matched. The faint dimple on the left cheek. The slight crookedness of the nose. But his eyes were different. Mine are brown. His were darker, almost black. Alina rushed out behind him. She stopped when she saw us standing there, facing each other. I could feel people inside the restaurant staring through the glass. She looked between us like she was trying to figure out which one was real. He took a step toward me. I stepped back. He stopped when I stopped, like he didn't want to get too close. Alina pulled out her phone. I heard the faint sound of a camera shutter. He slowly turned his head toward her, and then, without breaking eye contact with me, he smiled. I've never smiled like that in my life. It wasn't wide. It wasn't dramatic, just a small, controlled smile. Like he knew something I didn't. Alina looked down at her phone screen. Her face went pale. She looked up at us again, and I swear her eyes looked watery. She backed away from both of us. Then she ran. Just turned and ran down the sidewalk toward the dead train station. I stood there for maybe 2 seconds too long. He turned back to me. And then he spoke. Not words I could understand. It sounded like my voice, but layered, like two recordings playing slightly out of sync. My own tone, my own pitch, but distorted. I didn't wait to hear more. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to run. I just did. Down the opposite direction of the street, past a closed pharmacy, past a bus stop with no one in it. I heard footsteps behind me. Matching mine. Exactly matching mine. When I slowed slightly, the footsteps slowed. When I sped up, they sped up. I turned a corner sharply into an alley between 2 apartment buildings. Trash bins lined the wall. A single yellow light above a back door buzzed faintly. I turned around. He was at the entrance of the alley. Not out of breath. Just standing there. He tilted his head the same way I do when I'm confused. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out my phone. My actual phone. I instinctively grabbed my pocket. Empty. He looked down at the screen, then up at me. My phone buzzed in his hand. I heard it. He slowly lifted it toward me so I could see. It was a notification from Tinder. New match. His thumb hovered over the screen, and then he swiped right. On someone using my pictures. My name. My bio. But the location was different. Not our city. Another one. He lowered the phone and looked at me again. And then he did something I still don't understand. He stepped backward into the darkness at the end of the alley. But there was no exit back there. Just a brick wall. He kept stepping. And stepping. Until the shadow swallowed him. I ran to the end of the alley. Brick wall. Solid. Cold. Real. No door. No gap. Nothing. My phone was still gone. When I finally walked home, I kept checking reflections in car windows, in store glass, and anything that showed my face. Everything looked normal. Except once. When I passed a dark window, I could have sworn my reflection blinked a second too late. That night, from my laptop, I logged into Tinder and deactivated my account. There was already a new message waiting. From Alina. It just said, "Which one of you is typing?" I haven't used Tinder since. Sometimes I still think about Lantern House. About that red lantern with the cracked glass. About how he knew my posture, my habits, my face better than I ever did. And the worst part is this. Every now and then, I get a notification on my email saying someone tried to log into my account from a different city. Always a different city. Always late at night. I should have left when the waitress spilled water on the table and he didn't even blink. That's the first thing that comes back to me. Not the notification, not the smile. Just the fact that ice water soaked the sleeve of his flannel and he stayed completely still, like his body forgot how to react. His name was Carter. We matched on a Sunday night when I was laying on my bed, half watching some random video and half swiping out of boredom. His profile was simple. 2 pictures. One of him leaning against a brick wall with this awkward half grin. The other at what looked like a county fair, holding a giant stuffed bear. His bio said he liked late night drives in old diners. That part mattered later. We talked for about a week. He was normal. Not overly charming, not weird. He asked about my classes. I asked about his job. He said he worked nights stocking inventory at a hardware store on the edge of town. He lived alone in a small rental house. Said he liked the quiet. We decided to meet at this 24-hour diner called Maple Stop, way out near the highway where truckers usually hang out. I picked it because it's public and always busy. I told my friend where I was going. I even sent her his profile. I got there first. It was around 9:40 p.m. The place smelled like burnt coffee and syrup. Neon lights buzzing in the windows. A couple of older guys sitting at the counter watching a baseball game on a tiny TV in the corner. He walked in at 9:47. I remember checking the time because I was pretending not to look nervous. He looked exactly like his pictures. Same messy brown hair. Same thin face. He was wearing a red and black flannel and jeans. He smiled when he saw me and gave a small wave. At first, everything felt normal. We sat in a booth near the back. Ordered fries and milkshakes. He talked about how he almost didn't come because he hates first dates. I told him I almost canceled too. There was something slightly off, but I couldn't place it. He held eye contact a little too long. Not in a creepy way, just intense, like he was studying me. When the waitress came by and accidentally knocked over his water glass, it spilled across the table and onto his arm. I jumped back. He didn't. He just slowly looked down at his soaked sleeve, then back up at her, then back at me. No reaction, no laugh, no annoyance, just blank. He wiped his arm with a napkin and continued talking like nothing happened. That's when my phone buzzed. At first I ignored it. I didn't want to be rude, but then it buzzed again and again. He paused mid-sentence and looked at my phone on the table. I picked it up. It was a Tinder notification. It said, "Your match has been reported missing." For a second, I thought it was some glitch. I actually almost laughed. I even thought maybe it was some weird marketing thing. Then I noticed the profile picture in the notification. It was Carter's face. The same picture of him leaning against the brick wall. My chest went tight. I felt this rush of confusion, like my brain was trying to load 2 different realities at once. He noticed my face change. I turned the phone toward him without thinking. He leaned forward slightly to see the screen. And then he smiled. Not confused, not worried, just smiled. Not wide, not exaggerated, just this calm, almost pleased smile. I felt my stomach drop. I refreshed the app. His profile was still there in our messages, but when I tapped it, it wouldn't load fully, just a spinning circle. Then a small banner popped up at the top saying this user may no longer be active. I looked up at him again. He was watching me carefully. I asked him if he had any idea what that meant. He shrugged lightly, like it was no big deal. He said sometimes people report accounts as a joke. But he didn't look surprised. He looked like he had been waiting for it. I opened my browser and typed his name. I don't even know why I did that. Maybe instinct. Nothing came up at first. Just a LinkedIn profile that didn't match him. A couple random social media accounts. Then I added the name of our town. A local news article popped up from 3 days ago. Man reported missing after leaving for work at hardware store. The thumbnail photo hadn't loaded yet. My hands felt numb as I clicked it. The page loaded slowly because the diner's Wi-Fi was terrible. When the photo finally appeared, it was him. Same flannel, same messy hair, same face. But in the photo, he looked slightly different. His eyes looked more tired. There was a small scar on his chin that I didn't see on the guy sitting across from me. The article said he was last seen leaving his night shift at a hardware store on the edge of town. His car was found abandoned near a wooded area about 10 miles from where we were sitting. Reported missing by family after he didn't return home. I looked up slowly. He was still there. Still smiling slightly. I noticed something then. The scar on the chin. The guy in front of me didn't have it. I stared at his face harder, trying to find differences. His skin looked smoother, too smooth, like a filtered photo in real life. He asked me what the article said. I told him. He leaned back in the booth, glancing around the diner casually. Then he looked back at me and said, "That's weird." But there was no fear in his voice. No confusion. Just curiosity. I felt trapped in that booth, like the vinyl seats were closing in. The diner suddenly felt quieter, even though nothing had changed. I asked him where he lived again. He repeated the same area as before. I asked what street. He hesitated for half a second, then gave a street name that I recognized instantly, because it was the same street listed in the missing person article. I didn't say anything. My phone buzzed again. Another Tinder notification. Your match has been reported missing. This time it wasn't Carter's face. It was mine. My own profile picture. I froze. I'd opened the app. My profile wouldn't load, just the same spinning circle. I looked at him slowly. He was already looking at me, smiling wider now. I suddenly remembered something small and important. When we first sat down, he had asked me if I lived alone. I had said yes. He had nodded slowly, like he was confirming something. The waitress came by to check on us. I wanted to say something. Anything. But what do you even say? Hey, the guy I'm on a date with is apparently missing, and now my own dating app says I am too. Instead, I asked for the check. He didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me to stay. He just watched me. As we stood up, I noticed something else. He left no fingerprints on the wet table where the water had spilled earlier. My own handprints were faintly visible in the light. His side was clean. We walked toward the door together. The neon lights flickered slightly as we passed under them. Outside, the parking lot was mostly empty. A couple of trucks near the entrance. My car was parked under a broken streetlight. He stopped walking about 10 feet from my car. I stopped too. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was something new. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He held it up. On his screen was Tinder. My profile. But the photos were slightly different. In one of them, I was standing in front of my house. A picture I had never taken. I felt my throat close up. He swiped on my profile. Matched. His phone buzzed. Then mine buzzed. New match. I didn't wait. I got in my car and locked the doors. He didn't chase me. He just stood there in the parking lot, under the flickering light, watching as I backed out. When I drove past him, he was still smiling. I went straight home, locked every door, turned on every light. I'd opened Tinder again. My account was gone. The next morning, I checked the news. The missing person article had been updated. The man's body had been found in the woods near his abandoned car. Time of death estimated around 2 weeks ago. I matched with Carter 9 days ago. His profile is still active. I know because yesterday my friend sent me a screenshot. She said, "Isn't this the guy you went out with?" And there he was. Same brick wall picture. Same half grin. Active 2 miles away from her. I knew something was wrong the second she suggested the selfie. Not because that's weird. People take selfies on dates all the time. But it was the way she said it. Too casual. Too perfectly timed. Like she'd been waiting for the exact right moment. Her name was Marin. We matched on a Friday night when I was half asleep and swiping without thinking. She has this really simple profile. No over-the-top captions. Just 3 pictures and one line in her bio that said I like quiet places and long walks when no one is around. Looking back, that line should have been enough. Her pictures were normal. First one was a close-up selfie, soft lighting, her hair down, faint smile. Second was her standing near a lake at sunset. Third was a random one in a coffee shop. Nothing flashy. We talked for about 2 weeks. She replied fast, but never too fast. She never double texted. She never asked for my social media. Just kept everything inside Tinder. I remember asking if she wanted to move to texting, and she said she preferred to stay on the app for now. I didn't think much of it. She suggested we meet at an indoor mini golf place on the edge of town. It was one of those glow-in-the-dark ones inside a warehouse near the industrial district. I had never been there, but she said she went there sometimes because it was usually empty during the week. We met on a Tuesday at 8 p.m. The parking lot was almost completely empty except for my car and one other sedan parked near the entrance. The building looked old from the outside. Faded paint. One flickering sign that said neon greens. When I walked in, the place was quiet. Black walls painted with glowing shapes. Cheap carpet that smelled slightly damp. One guy at the counter scrolling on his phone. She was already inside, standing near the first hole. She looked exactly like her pictures. Same long brown hair. Same soft smile. Same small scar near her collarbone that was visible in one of her photos if you zoomed in. She waved when she saw me. At first, everything felt normal. We played mini golf. She laughed when I missed an easy shot. She barely reacted when she got holed in one. Just smiled slightly like she expected it. There was something calm about her. Almost too calm. No awkward fidgeting. No nervous jokes. Just steady. After about 30 minutes, we were the only ones there besides the employee at the counter. Even he disappeared into the back room at some point. The music overhead was low and echoey. Some instrumental playlist that didn't match the setting. We finished the last hole and sat down on this worn-out bench near the exit. The black light made her eyes look brighter than normal. That's when she said we should take a selfie. She leaned in close, already holding her phone up. I didn't think anything of it. I leaned in too. She smiled softly at the camera. I tried not to look awkward. The flash went off. She lowered her phone and stared at the screen. For a second, her expression didn't change. Then she turned the phone toward me. It was the exact same photo as her first profile picture. Same angle, same lighting, same slight tilt of her head. Even my face was positioned the same way as in the photo on her profile. But that photo on her profile had been there when we matched. 3 months ago, according to the timestamp on her account. I felt confused at first. I thought maybe she edited it fast. Maybe she swapped it right now. But the timestamp was still there under the image when she opened her profile. Posted 3 months ago. She scrolled up and showed me. It was identical down to the smallest detail. I laughed nervously and said that's weird. She didn't laugh. She just watched my face carefully. I asked her if she had edited the photo right now and uploaded it. She slowly shook her head. She showed me her camera roll. The photo we had just taken was there at the top. Time stamped for tonight. Then she opened her Tinder profile again. The same photo. Time stamped 3 months ago. My heart started beating harder. I tried to think logically. Maybe she recreated the photo from memory somehow. But that didn't explain my face in it. We had never met before tonight. Unless we had. That thought hit me like a cold wave. I asked her if we had ever met before. She said no. But she said it too quickly. I asked if she had ever been to this mini golf place before. She nodded. Said she liked it because it was quiet. I suddenly noticed something else. In the background of the selfie behind us was a mural on the wall, a glowing green octopus shape. I turned around slowly. Behind us was a plain black wall. No mural. I stood up and walked around the corner. 2 holes back, on the other side of the course, was the octopus mural. The exact same one in the photo. Meaning the photo wasn't taken where we were sitting. It was taken somewhere else in the building. I walked back to her. She was still sitting calmly on the bench watching me. I asked her when she took that original photo. She said 3 months ago. I asked with who. She looked down at her hands for a second. Then she said with you. I felt my stomach drop. I told her we matched 2 weeks ago. She said no, we matched 3 months ago. She opened her messages, and there they were. Conversations between her and someone with my name and my pictures. Jokes I would make. References to things I like. Plans to meet at Neon Greetings. Dated 3 months ago. I grabbed my phone and opened our chat. It only went back 2 weeks. No messages from 3 months ago. I showed her. She stared at my screen like she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then she looked up at me slowly. She said I didn't show up last time. I asked what she meant. She said we planned to meet here 3 months ago. She said she waited for 2 hours. She said I never came. I told her that's impossible. I didn't even know this place existed 3 months ago. Her expression didn't change. She opened her camera roll again and scrolled back. There were multiple selfies. All of us. Different outfits. Different positions around the course. All time stamped 3 months ago. In every single one, I was standing next to her. Same face, same clothes I owned, even a hoodie I still have. My head felt light. I tried to think of any explanation. Deepfake. Some weird app glitch. Someone using my pictures. But these weren't just photos. They were taken in different spots around the building. Different angles. In one of them, I was holding a mini golf club mid-swing. I have never been here before tonight. I know that. She stood up slowly and walked past me toward the octopus mural. I followed without thinking. When we got there, she held her phone up again. She positioned us exactly like the original selfie. She didn't even need to adjust much. Like she already knew the angle. She took another photo. Then showed me. It matched another picture on her profile. The second one. From 3 months ago. Same background. Same expressions. I looked at the timestamp. Tonight. Then at her profile. 3 months ago. I suddenly noticed something in the background of the old photos. Near the exit sign. A faint figure. Standing near the counter. Watching us. I turned toward the counter. The employee was back now, leaning casually and looking at his phone. I looked back at the photo. The figure was closer to us than the counter. Almost right behind me. I zoomed in. The face was blurry. But it looked like me. Not the me in the photo. Another me. Standing behind us. Watching. I felt my throat tighten. I looked at her again. She was staring at me with this strange mix of relief and disappointment. Like she finally got something she'd been waiting for. Or like something was about to happen again. My phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. New message from Marin. I looked at her. She hadn't touched her phone. I opened it. The message was dated 3 months ago. It said, "Are you almost here?" I showed her. Her face went pale. Then her phone buzzed too. She looked down. Her expression dropped. She slowly turned her screen toward me. On her screen was a message from me. Dated tonight. It said I'm outside. But I was standing right in front of her. The lights above us flickered. For a split second, the room went completely dark. When the lights came back on, she was standing a few feet farther away than before. Closer to the exit. Her face looked confused now. Like she didn't recognize me anymore. I checked my phone again. Our chat history was gone. Completely empty. Her profile picture had changed. It was the selfie we just took tonight. Time stamped 3 months ago. I looked up. She was no longer near the exit. She was back on the bench where we first sat. Exactly where she had been when she first asked for the selfie. Looking at her phone. Like she was waiting. I walked slowly toward her. She looked up and smiled softly. And asked if I wanted to take a selfie.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
I used to think the worst thing that could happen on a Tinder date was being ghosted after. I was wrong. Being ghosted mid-date is worse. Being unmatched while the guy is still sitting across from you is something else entirely. His name was Even. That's what his profile said, at least. He had that outdoorsy type of look. Pictures of him hiking, one of him holding a fish at a lake, one in front of some cabin in the woods. His bio said he liked getting away from the city and disconnecting from everything. That line stuck with me later in a way I wish it hadn't. We matched on a Wednesday. We talked for about 5 days. He was normal at first. Asked about my job. I told him I work part-time in a bookstore near where I live. He said he worked freelance in tech, mostly remote stuff. He never really explained what kind of tech. I didn't push it. He suggested meeting somewhere quiet instead of a crowded bar. Said he hated loud places. I agreed but picked the location myself. A small rooftop cafe downtown called Driftline. It's on top of an old parking garage. You have to take this narrow elevator up 5 floors, and the doors open directly into the cafe. It's mostly just string lights, metal tables, and a view of the river cutting through the city. It was early evening when I got there. The sky was turning orange. Wind was stronger than I expected, pushing against the railing. There were only 3 other tables occupied, a couple on one side and 2 girls taking pictures near the edge. He was already there, sitting at the table near the far corner away from the others. He stood up when he saw me. He looked exactly like his pictures. Tall, dark hair, light stubble. He wore a gray jacket and dark jeans. He smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. At first it was fine. We ordered iced coffee, talked about random stuff. He asked if I always met guys in public places like this. I said obviously yes. He nodded slowly like he was approving of that answer. He kept his phone face down on the table. Every few minutes it would vibrate lightly, but he ignored it. I noticed he kept glancing toward the elevator doors, like he was checking if someone else was coming up. I asked if he was expecting someone. He said no, just habit. The wind picked up more as the sun dipped lower. The string lights above us swayed slightly. About 20 minutes in, I got a notification from Tinder. It said Ethan sent you a message. I looked up at him confused, because he was sitting right there. He picked up his phone slowly. Then he looked at me and said he was going to unmatch me. I laughed because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh. He unlocked his phone and I saw my own profile picture reflected faintly in his screen. He tapped something. My phone buzzed again. When I opened Tinder, our conversation was gone. Completely gone. I looked up at him confused and asked what he was doing. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Good. Now this won't be tracked." My stomach dropped. I asked what he meant. He glanced around casually like he was checking if anyone was close enough to hear. He said that apps log locations when matches meet, that they track patterns, that it's all stored somewhere. I told him it sounded paranoid. He just smiled slightly. He said you never know who's watching. I tried to play it off like a joke, but something about his tone was different. Calm, certain. I opened Tinder again, thinking maybe it was a glitch. Nope, our match was gone. No trace. I even searched his name in my messages. Nothing. He was still sitting right there. The elevator doors opened behind him. No one stepped out. They just opened and closed again. He didn't turn around this time. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. He asked if anyone knew I was there with him. I lied and said yes, my friend has his profile and my location. He nodded slowly. Then he asked if I had shared it before he unmatched me. I didn't answer, because I haven't. I had sent his profile to my friend earlier that day, but if he was unmatched now, I didn't know if that link would still work. He picked up his iced coffee and took a slow sip. Then he said something that made my chest feel tight. He said most people rely too much on apps to feel safe. He said once the digital trail is gone, it's just 2 people in a place. The wind pushed harder against the tables. One of the girls near the railing left with her friend. The couple on the other side got up and headed toward the elevator. Within a minute, it was just us. I noticed the employee behind the small counter near the bar area was gone too, maybe inside grabbing something. I stood up slightly and said I was going to the restroom. He didn't stop me. But as I walked toward the small stairwell that led down to the lower level bathrooms, I heard him stand up too. I turned around. He was walking toward the elevator. He pressed the button. The doors didn't open right away. He looked back at me and smiled again. That same small smile. The elevator finally opened. He stepped inside. But instead of pressing a button, he just stood there, waiting. Like he expected me to get in too. I didn't move. After a few seconds, the doors closed on him. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in minutes. I grabbed my phone and immediately texted my friend his name and description. I tried sending her his profile link, but it said user not found. The elevator dinged again. My heart jumped. The doors opened. Empty. He wasn't inside. I felt a cold wave of panic. There's only one elevator. No stairs visible except the emergency exit near the back, which triggers an alarm if opened. I rushed to the railing and looked down over the edge of the parking garage. 5 floors below, I saw him, standing near my car, looking up. There's no way he could have gotten down that fast. The elevator ride alone takes at least 30 seconds. I had been standing there the entire time after he went in. He raised his hand slightly, not waving, just acknowledging that I saw him. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Another message came through. It was a photo, taken from above, of me, standing at the rooftop railing. I felt my breath hitch. I looked around. There was no one else up there. I looked back down. He was still by my car, looking at his phone, then looking back up at me. I ran to the emergency exit door and pushed it open. An alarm started blaring instantly, loud and sharp. I didn't care. I bolted down the concrete stairs as fast as I could. When I reached the bottom, he wasn't in my car anymore. My car doors were locked. I got inside, hands shaking. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. It said, "Now it's just us." I looked up through the windshield. He was standing at the exit of the garage, blocking the way out. I reversed quickly and took another ramp down, heart pounding. There's a second exit on the opposite side. I sped toward it. As I drove out onto the street, I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was standing at the top level railing again, 5 floors up, watching my car disappear. I don't know how he moved that fast. I don't know how he took that photo. I deleted Tinder that night. 2 days later, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. It just said you unmatched too late. No name, no number. I moved apartments a month after that. I don't live anywhere near downtown anymore. But sometimes when I park at night and look up at tall buildings, I check the rooftops, just in case he's standing there again. The only reason I'm still here to write this is because I lied about the time. That's the part that sticks with me. Not the drive. Not the look on her face later. Just that tiny decision to say someone was expecting me. I almost didn't. Her name was Leela. We matched late on a Monday night. I remember because I was laying on my couch half reading an article and half swiping, not really paying attention. Her profile was simple. 2 clear pictures, one kind of blurry one taken inside a car at night. Bio said she liked quiet roads and getting out of the city. She messaged first. Just asked if I ever felt like the city was too loud even when it was silent. It was a weird opener, but it worked. We talked about random stuff. Music, late night drives, places outside town where you can park and see the stars. She seemed calm, not overly flirty, not dry either. After a few days, she suggested we meet somewhere different. Not a restaurant, not a bar. She said there's a spot outside town near an old water tower where you can see everything. Said it was peaceful. I hesitated. I usually stick to public places, but she sent a picture of the view. It looked normal. Just a gravel clearing near a field with the water tower in the background. We agreed to meet at a gas station off the highway first, and then drive there separately. That made me feel better. When I pulled into the gas station parking lot, it was already dark. Around 9:15 p.m., the place was half lit. One flickering light above pump 3. A semi-truck idling near the edge of the lot. She was leaning against a dark blue sedan near the air pump station. She looked exactly like her pictures. Blonde hair tied back, black hoodie, jeans, hands in her pockets. She smiled when she saw me. We talked for a few minutes under the buzzing gas station lights. She seemed relaxed. Maybe too relaxed, like she'd done this before. Then we got into our cars and she told me to follow her. The drive was longer than I expected, about 15 minutes down a 2-lane road that slowly turned into a narrower one. No streetlights, just trees and open fields. My headlights were the only thing lighting the road ahead. Eventually she turned onto a gravel path that led to the water tower. It wasn't fenced, just open land. The tower stood tall and rusted against the sky. The clearing near it had tire marks everywhere, like a lot of cars had been there before. We parked about 20 feet apart. I got out of my car. The air felt colder out there. No city noise, just wind moving through the grass. She walked over to me and suggested we sit in her car because it was warmer. I agreed. Her car smelled faintly like pine air freshener. The interior was clean but bare. No personal items. No trash. No clutter. We talked for a while. Just random stuff again. She asked about my job. I told her. She asked where I live. I gave her the general area but not the exact street. She nodded slowly. Then she asked something that made the air shift. She asked what time I told people I'd be home. The way she said it wasn't casual. It was careful, like she needed the exact answer. For a second, I almost said I didn't tell anyone. Because technically I hadn't told my roommate a specific time. I had just said I was going out. But something in her face made me change it. I told her my roommate was expecting me back by 11:30. Her expression changed immediately. Not dramatic, just a small frown, a tightening around her eyes. She asked if he was a light sleeper. I said yeah, pretty much. She leaned back slightly in her seat, looked out the windshield toward the water tower. Then she asked if anyone else knew where I was. I said I sent the location to a friend just in case. That part was a lie. Her jaw tightened slightly, just for a second. She asked why I did that. I shrugged and said it's just something I do. Silence settled in the car. The wind outside picked up. I could hear it brushing against the car doors. She asked if I trusted her. I said I just met her. She smiled at that, but it didn't feel warm. Then she asked if I would be willing to stay longer if no one was expecting me. I told her I probably had to head back around 11 anyway. She stared at me for a few seconds too long. Then she reached into the center console and pulled out her phone. She opened something and turned the screen slightly away from me. I caught a glimpse of a map. A small blinking dot. I realized it was my car. My stomach tightened. I asked what that was. She said it's just a tracking app she uses with friends. But she didn't explain how my car was on it. I hadn't connected to her Bluetooth. I hadn't shared anything. She noticed me staring at the screen and locked it. Then she said she wanted to show me something near the base of the water tower, said there was a better view from the other side. I hesitated. The clearing was darker now. Clouds had moved over the moon. I said maybe we could just stay near the cars. She looked annoyed for the first time. Not angry, just irritated. She asked again what time I said I'd be home. I repeated 11:30. She checked the time on the dashboard clock. 10:42. She did the math in her head. I could see it. Then she asked if my roommate would call if I wasn't home by then. I said probably. Another lie. She went quiet. The silence stretched long enough that it felt heavy. Then out of nowhere, headlights appeared at the end of the gravel path. Another car turning in. My heart jumped. She turned sharply to look. The car drove slowly into the clearing and parked near the edge. I felt relief at first. Another person here meant safety. But she didn't look relieved. She looked annoyed. She muttered something under her breath and unlocked her door. She stepped out of the car quickly. I followed. The other car's engine shut off. A man stepped out. Tall, putty out. Hard to see his face in the dark. They walked a few steps away from me and talked quietly. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was tense. She kept glancing back at me. The guy looked at me once, long enough that it felt intentional. After a minute, she walked back toward me alone. The other guy stayed by his car. She said we should probably head out since it's getting late. Her tone had changed. Flat. Controlled. I agreed immediately. We got back into our cars. As I started mine, I noticed her car didn't start right away. She just sat there, watching. I backed out first and headed toward the gravel path exit. In my rearview mirror, I saw her car finally turn on. But she didn't follow me. She stayed parked. And the other car's headlights turned back on too. They didn't follow me either. They just stayed there, watching my car leave. I drove faster than I should have down that narrow road. When I finally reached the highway and got under proper streetlights, I felt like I could breathe again. My phone buzzed. A message from her. It said you shouldn't lie about people waiting. I didn't respond. A minute later, another message came through. It said you were supposed to say no. I blocked her number. When I got home at 11:18, my roommate was asleep on the couch with the TV on. He hadn't been expecting me at all. The next morning, I read through local news out of curiosity. There was a short article about a man reported missing after meeting someone outside town near the old water tower. Last seen Tuesday night. That was the same night I met her. The article didn't give many details, just that his car was found abandoned near a field. I haven't driven past that water tower since. But sometimes when I'm out late and I pass dark gravel roads leading into open land, I think about that question. What time are you supposed to be home? And I'm glad I didn't say no one was waiting. I knew the night was wrong before the bio changed. The bio was just the moment everything snapped into place. His name was Jonah. We matched on a random Thursday afternoon when I was on my lunch break at the bookstore where I work. He had this quiet, almost awkward look in his photos. One of him sitting on a couch with a dog that clearly wasn't his. One of him at what looked like a museum. His bio said something simple about liking old movies and late dinners. Nothing dramatic, nothing edgy. We talked for about a week. He was consistent. Not overly charming, not dry. He asked about the books I liked. I asked about his job. He said he worked in data analysis for a shipping company near the docks. Night shifts, sometimes. He suggested dinner somewhere different from the usual crowded spots downtown. He picked this place called Harbor Glass, a restaurant built inside a converted greenhouse near the water. I had seen it before, but never been inside. It's basically a giant glass structure with plants everywhere and soft lights hanging from the ceiling. At night, it looks like you're eating inside a glowing bubble. I got there first. Around 8 p.m., the sky was already dark, and the water nearby reflected the lights from the port. The restaurant was about half full, mostly couples and small groups. The glass walls made it easy to see the outside parking lot and the dark stretch of water beyond it. He walked in a few minutes later. He looked like his pictures. Dark hair, a little messy, black jacket. Calm expression. He smiled when he saw me and gave a small wave. We sat near the back corner, close to a row of tall plants that almost blocked us from the rest of the room. The table was small, candle in the center. I remember thinking it felt almost too private for a first date. Dinner started normal. We ordered pasta and drinks. He asked about my roommate. I told him I live with one friend near downtown. He nodded slowly. He kept his phone on the table beside his plate, screen down. Every so often it would light up briefly, and he'd flip it over without checking it. At one point, I went to the restroom. When I came back, he was staring at his phone, not moving. He locked it quickly when he saw me sit down. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone checks their phone. We talked about random things. Movies. Travel. He mentioned he didn't use social media much because he liked staying low profile. I joked that Tinder counts as social media. He smiled slightly, but didn't answer. Halfway through dinner, I felt my phone vibrate in my bag. I ignored it at first. Then it vibrated again. I pulled it out casually. It was a Tinder notification. Jonah updated his profile. I frowned because that felt weird. He was sitting right across from me. I opened the app. His profile picture was still the same, but his bio had changed. It now read currently occupied. I stared at the screen for a second, thinking maybe it was delayed from earlier, but the small timestamp under it said updated just now. I looked up at him. He was watching me. Not in a confused way. More like he was waiting. I asked him if he had just updated his bio. He tilted his head slightly and asked what it said. I turned the phone toward him. He leaned in, glanced at it, then leaned back. He smiled faintly. He said that's accurate. My chest tightened. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he picked up his drink and took a slow sip. I refreshed the app. His distance still showed less than 1 mile away. But something else had changed. Under his name, it now said recently active. Even though he was sitting right there and hadn't touched his phone since I came back from the restroom. I looked at his hands. They were resting calmly on the table. His phone was face down beside his plate. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe he updated it earlier and it just pushed through now. Maybe the app glitched. But the timing felt too exact. Then my phone vibrated again. Another notification from Tinder. Jonah sent you a message. I slowly opened our chat. There was a new message. It said, "Can you see it now?" I looked up at him instantly. His phone was still face down. He hadn't moved. I asked if he just sent me that. He didn't deny it. He just said sometimes things update faster than people realize. I felt this wave of discomfort spread through me. I asked why his bio said currently occupied. He said because he was. Then he looked past me toward the glass wall of the greenhouse. I followed his gaze. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just the parking lot and the faint lights of the docks. Then I noticed a car parked directly across from the section of glass behind me. Headlights off. Engine probably off. But someone was sitting inside. I could see the faint outline of a person in the driver's seat, facing directly toward the restaurant, toward our table. I turned back to him. He was still looking at the car. I asked if he knew who that was. He shrugged slightly. My phone buzzed again. Another Tinder notification. Jonah updated his profile. I opened it immediately. The bio now reads still occupied. My heart started pounding. I looked up again. He hadn't touched his phone. His hands were still on the table. He asked if I was okay. I said yeah, just confused. He leaned forward slightly. He asked if I ever wondered how easy it is to edit something remotely. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he glanced toward the restroom hallway, then back at me, then at the glass wall again. I turned around slowly. The car outside had moved closer. It was now parked right up against a curb near the greenhouse wall. The person inside was clearer now. It looked like him. Same build. Same haircut. Sitting in the driver's seat. Watching. I felt dizzy. I turned back to the table. Jonah was still there. Still calm. Still watching me. I opened Tinder again. His bio had changed again. Occupied and monitored. I showed him. He nodded slightly. Like that was expected. I asked him who was in that car. He said someone making sure everything goes smoothly. I didn't like the way he said smoothly. I stood up suddenly, knocking my chair back slightly. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched. As I stepped away from the table, my phone buzzed one more time. Another message from him on Tinder. It said you shouldn't stand up yet. I didn't look back at him. I walked toward the front of the restaurant quickly. The hostess glanced at me confused. I said I needed to leave. As I pushed through the glass door, I glanced back once. He was still sitting at the table, but the chair across from him was empty. I blinked. For a split second, it looked like I had imagined him entirely. Then the greenhouse lights flickered slightly, and he was back, sitting exactly where he had been, watching the door. I hurried to my car. As I got in, I glanced toward the car that had been parked near the glass. It was gone. The parking spot was empty. My phone buzzed one last time before I started the engine. Tinder notification. Jonah updated his profile. I opened it with shaking hands. The bio now read available again. Distance less than 1 mile. Profile still active. I drove home without looking back. When I got inside my apartment, I locked the door and opened Tinder again. His profile was gone from my matches. But when I switched to the main swiping screen, he appeared as a new suggestion. Same pictures. Same face. Bio reading looking for someone to have dinner with. Active now. I knew I messed up the second she moved her chair closer instead of letting me move mine back. That's when it hit me that this wasn't just an awkward date. It was something else. Something planned. Her name was Tessa. We matched on a Sunday afternoon when I was bored and half watching a game at home. Her profile was normal enough. A few pictures at cafes. One in a library. One with the skyline behind her at night. Her bio said she liked deep conversations and people who don't scare easily. I should have paid more attention to that last part. We talked for about a week. She was smart. Asked a lot of questions about my job, my friends, where I live. Not in an obvious way. Just worked it into conversation. I told her I live alone in a small apartment near the university. She asked if I liked it quiet. I said yeah, mostly. She suggested meeting at a place called the Attic Room. It's the small cocktail lounge above a restaurant downtown. You have to walk through the main dining area, then up a narrow staircase to get to it. It's dim, kind of cramped, with old couches and small round tables. I got there around 8:30 p.m. It was packed downstairs but quieter upstairs. Only 4 or 5 tables occupied. Music low, lights soft and yellow. She was already sitting in the corner on one of the couches. She looked like her photos. Dark hair, sharp features, confident posture. She smiled when she saw me and patted the space next to her on the couch instead of the chair across from her. I hesitated for half a second but sat down. Right away I noticed how close we were. The couch dipped slightly toward her side, so my body naturally leaned in her direction. We ordered drinks, talked about random stuff. She maintained eye contact almost the entire time. Didn't look around the room much, didn't check her phone. At first I thought that was refreshing. Then it started to feel intense. She asked if anyone knew I was there. I said yeah, my friend knows I'm out. She asked if I told him where. I said just downtown. She asked what time I planned to be home. I shrugged and said not sure. Her expression changed slightly when I said that. Not a smile, not a frown, just a small shift. About 40 minutes in, I started feeling uncomfortable. Not because she was rude. She wasn't. It was just the way she kept steering the conversation toward isolation. Asking if I preferred being alone. Asking if I trusted strangers easily. I laughed it off at first. Then she moved her glass onto the table and leaned closer to me. Close enough that I could feel her breath near my ear. She lowered her voice and said that if I tried to leave, she'd scream. For a second, I thought I misheard her. But the look on her face wasn't playful. It was calm, controlled. I leaned back slightly and asked what she meant. She smiled faintly and said it would be very easy for her to make it look like I did something wrong. My chest tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. I glanced around. The other tables were busy with their own conversations. The bartender was at the far end of the room. She leaned back like nothing had happened and took a sip of her drink. I tried to stand up casually, pretending I needed the restroom. Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist under the table. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. She leaned in again and repeated herself quietly. If you try to leave, I scream. My heart was pounding. I sat back down slowly. She smiled that we were just having a normal date. I asked why she would do that. She said because she doesn't like being left. She said people always try to leave too soon. I realized then that this wasn't random. She had done this before. I looked toward the staircase leading downstairs. It was narrow. If she screamed, everyone would rush up. I'd be trapped in a room full of strangers who would automatically assume I was the problem. She must have seen that realization on my face. She nodded slightly. She said all I have to do is stay until she says I can go. I asked how long that would be. She said she hadn't decided yet. I tried to think of a way out that wouldn't trigger her. I picked up my phone slowly and pretended to check a message. She leaned closer instantly. I felt her watching my screen. I sent a quick text to my friend that just said call me in 5 minutes and act urgent. She didn't stop me. She just smiled. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. I answered and tried to sound casual but concerned. My friend played along perfectly, saying something about an emergency with my apartment. I stood up quickly and said I had to go. Tessa's face changed instantly. She grabbed my arm again. I gently pulled away. She stood up too. And for a split second, I thought she was actually going to do it. Scream. Her mouth even opened slightly, but then she closed it. She looked around the room, then back at me, and smiled. She said fine, like she was granting permission. I didn't wait. I walked straight to the staircase and down into the crowded restaurant below. I didn't stop until I was outside on the sidewalk. My heart was racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. I looked up at the window of the attic room. She was standing there, looking down at me, still smiling. The next morning, I opened Tinder to unmatch her. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone. I searched her name. Nothing. A few days later, I read a small post in the local community group online. A guy warning others about a woman at a downtown lounge who accused him of grabbing her when he tried to leave. He said the staff nearly called the police. He didn't mention her name, but the location was the same. The attic room. I haven't gone back there since. Sometimes I think about how close that came to going very wrong. How easily she could have screamed. How quickly my life could have flipped. And the worst part is, I still remember how calm she looked when she said it. Like it was just another rule. If you try to leave. I didn't even want to go on that date. That's the stupid part. I almost canceled twice because I had a headache and it was raining and I just felt off. If I had trusted that feeling, I wouldn't remember the way his thumb kept sliding down his screen over and over like he was trying to force something to load. His name was Marcus. His profile was pretty plain. 2 selfies, 1 gin picture, 1 with his dog. Bio said he liked psychology podcasts and people watching. That last part should have stood out more, but it didn't at the time. It just sounded like something everyone says to seem interesting. We talked for about 10 days. He asked a lot of questions. Not in a creepy way, just very specific. What kind of reactions make me uncomfortable? Whether I get startled easily? If I'm good at hiding fear during horror movies? I thought he was just trying to be quirky. We agreed to meet at a late-night dessert place called Sugar Balls. It's in the basement level of an old office building downtown. You have to go down a wide staircase from the sidewalk. The walls are concrete, and the place is all exposed pipes and dim lights. It's open until midnight, mostly for college kids. It was raining that night, the kind of steady rain that makes the sidewalks glossy and reflective. I got there a little after 9. He was already sitting at a small table near the back, under one of the hanging lights. He looked like his pictures. Dark hair, kind of thin, nervous smile. He stood up when he saw me, almost knocking his chair over. At first, everything seemed fine. We ordered milkshakes, talked about work. I told him I lived about 15 minutes away in a small apartment near the park. He nodded like he was filing that away. But I noticed something early on. He kept checking his phone. Not casually. Constantly. He would unlock it, swipe down like he was refreshing something, stare at the screen for a second, then lock it again. Over and over. I asked if he was expecting something important. He said no, just checking something. He tried to laugh it off, but his hand was slightly shaking. About 20 minutes in, he excused himself and went to the restroom. He left his phone on the table by accident. The screen lit up while he was gone. I glanced at it without thinking. It was Tinder. On his own profile. He was refreshing it. I saw his bio. It was different from when we matched. It now said conducting an observation. My stomach tightened. When he came back, he grabbed his phone quickly and looked at it again. Then he looked at me, studied me, like he was waiting for something. I asked if everything was okay. He hesitated, then muttered that I wasn't reacting like the others. At first, I thought I misheard him. I asked what he meant. He shook his head slightly and refreshed Tinder again. His thumb moved fast, almost frantic. He looked at my face carefully after each refresh, like he expected me to suddenly do something. I started to feel like I was part of something I didn't understand. I asked what others. He avoided eye contact. Said nothing. Just kept refreshing. The room around us felt louder suddenly. The hum of the fridge behind the counter. The scrape of chairs. The rain hitting the sidewalk above us. Then my phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. Marcus updated his profile. I slowly opened it under the table. His bio now reads subject unresponsive. My heart started pounding. I looked up at him. He was staring at me intensely now. He whispered again that I wasn't reacting like the others. I asked, reacting to what? He leaned forward slightly. And that's when I realized something else. Every time he refreshed Tinder, he was glancing not at his own profile, but at mine. I opened my profile quickly. It looked normal at first. Then I noticed my bio had changed. It now said participating. I know for a fact I didn't change it. I felt a cold wave of panic. I asked him if he was hacking my account. He smiled nervously. Said no, just observing. He refreshed again. My phone buzzed again immediately. Marcus updated his profile. It now re-escalation phase. I stood up slightly, thinking about leaving. He panicked. Told me not to move yet. Said it would ruin the sequence. I sat back down slowly, more out of confusion than fear. He leaned closer. His eyes looked almost desperate now. He said usually by now there's some sign. Sweating, raised voice, visible fear. I realized then, he had done this before. He was testing reactions. He was using Tinder to mess with people in real time. I looked around the room. There were about 6 other people scattered around, none paying attention to us. I asked what happens when someone reacts. He swallowed hard. Said that's when it gets interesting. He refreshed again. Nothing happened. He looked frustrated. He muttered that maybe the connection was bad. Then he did something that made my chest tighten. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote. Just a basic black remote with one red button. He placed it on the table between us. He said sometimes external stimuli helps. I stared at it. I asked what it did. He didn't answer directly. Just refreshed Tinder again. My phone buzzed again. My bio had changed. It now read phase 2. My breathing started getting shallow. I stood up abruptly this time. He grabbed the remote and pressed the red button. There was a loud popping sound from somewhere behind me. I flinched hard and turned around. One of the hanging lights near the counter had shattered. Glass fell onto the floor. People screamed. The employee behind the counter ducked. My heart was racing. I turned back to him. He was staring at me intensely. Watching. Analyzing. He whispered that there it is. He refreshed Tinder again. My phone buzzed. His bio now read subject responding. I felt sick. I realized the shattered light wasn't random. He had triggered it. Maybe some device planted earlier. Maybe something tampered with. He stood up suddenly, knocking his chair back. He looked both excited and terrified at the same time. He muttered that this one's different. He refreshed again. Then his face changed. Confusion. He refreshed harder, like that would fix something. He muttered that it's not logging. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and ran toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard him calling out something about incomplete data. I reached the top of the stairs and pushed out into the rain. I didn't look back. When I got home, I opened Tinder. My account was locked. It said suspicious activity detected. Marcus was gone from my matches. The next day, I read an article about a small electrical malfunction at Sugar Vault causing the light fixture to burst. They blamed faulty wiring. But I know what I saw. He wasn't surprised by that pop. He was waiting for it. Waiting for me to react. I deleted Tinder that night. Sometimes I still think about the way he kept refreshing. Like he was expecting the app to tell him something about me. Like I wasn't a person. Just a test. I didn't even notice the notebook at first. That's what bothers me. It was sitting right there on the table between us the entire time, and I thought it was just some planner or journal. If I had paid attention earlier, maybe I would have left sooner. Her name was Anya. We matched on a random Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. Her profile was clean and simple. No weird quotes, no dramatic captions. Just a few photos of her hiking, one in a bookstore, one in a cafe with a small smile like she didn't really want the picture taken. Her bio said she liked structure and organization. That sounded normal. I like organized people. I'm not the most put together guy, so I figured it would balance out. We talked for about a week. She was consistent. Good morning texts. Detailed replies. She asked about my routine, my job schedule, what days I usually go out. I thought she was just trying to plan around availability. She suggested we meet at a small tea house called Willow Lantern. It's not a typical date spot. It's quiet, almost library-level quiet. Soft instrumental music playing low, shelves of loose-leaf tea behind the counter, dim hanging lamps over each table. I got there around 7 p.m. It was lightly raining outside. The windows were fogged from the warmth inside. She was already seated at a corner table near the back, and the notebook was right there in front of her. Small, black, neat. She looked exactly like her photos. Dark, straight hair, pale skin, calm expression. She smiled politely when she saw me and closed the notebook gently. I didn't think anything of it. We ordered tea. She recommended something floral and said it helps people relax. I just nodded. The first half hour was normal. She asked about my work. I told her I work in logistics for a warehouse near the highway. She nodded and said that sounds stable. I didn't know why that word felt strange coming from her. She asked where I live. I gave a general area, but not my exact address. She didn't push for more. At one point, she opened the notebook again while I was talking. I assumed she was checking something unrelated, maybe a schedule. I kept talking about my college years, some random story about a bad roommate. Then she interrupted me gently and asked if my full name is Daniel Carter. I froze for a second. I had only told her my first name. I asked how she knew my last name. She tapped the notebook lightly with her pen and said she likes to be thorough. Something about the way she said thorough made my stomach tighten. I laughed it off and said, yeah, that's me. She nodded and made a small check mark next to something in the notebook. I leaned slightly to see what she was writing, but she angled it away from me smoothly. She asked if I've ever met someone from Tinder who made me uncomfortable. I said yeah, once or twice. She smiled faintly and said people can be unpredictable. Then she did something that changed the entire tone of the night. She turned the notebook toward me, just for a second. Long enough for me to see what was on the page. It wasn't a planner. It was a list. A list of names. Full names. With small notes written beside each one. Some had check marks. Some had dates. Some had small symbols I didn't understand. And one name near the middle had a thick line drawn through it. I felt a cold rush of confusion. I asked what that was. She didn't hide it. She said it was her matches. Past ones. I laughed nervously and said you keep a list. She nodded calmly. Said she likes to track outcomes. I asked what outcomes. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she picked up her pen and slowly crossed a line through one of the names as we sat there. My heart skipped. I asked why she did that. She looked up at me with a calm expression and said because that one is resolved. Resolved. The word echoed in my head. I glanced at the name she crossed out. It wasn't familiar to me, but I noticed something else. Next to that name was a small note that said final meeting. My mouth felt dry. I asked what that meant. She tilted her head slightly and asked if I believe every interaction serves a purpose. I didn't know how to respond to that. I asked what happened to the guy she just crossed off. She shrugged lightly and said not everyone continues. That sentence felt heavy. I looked at the list again. There were at least 15 names. Some had dates going back months. Some had notes like coffee, movie, walk. Next to a few were single words. Unsuitable. Reactive. Compliant. I felt like I was looking at data, not people. I asked what she planned to do with my name. She smiled softly and said that depends. On what? She leaned back slightly in her chair and studied me. Said she was still deciding. I suddenly became very aware of how quiet the tea house was. Only 2 other tables occupied. The staff behind the counter moving slowly. Soft music filling the space. She picked up her pen again and tapped it lightly against the page where my name must have been. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. She asked if anyone knew I was meeting her tonight. I said yes, my brother knows. That was a lie. She paused. Then she asked if he knew where. I said generally, yeah. She studied my face like she was trying to detect something. Then she nodded slowly. Said that's good. I asked why that's good. She didn't answer. Instead, she closed the notebook gently and slid it back into her bag. The rest of the conversation felt forced. I kept glancing at her bag, wondering how many names were in there, wondering what resolved really meant. After another 10 minutes, I told her I had an early morning and needed to head out. She didn't protest. She just smiled politely and said she appreciated the data. Data. I stood up and reached for my wallet. She said, don't worry, it's covered. I didn't remember her paying, but I didn't argue. As I walked toward the door, I glanced back once. She had the notebook out again, and she was writing something. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt colder. I pulled out my phone and searched one of the names I remembered from the list. It took a few tries, but I found a local news article from 2 months ago. Man reported missing after last seen meeting someone from dating app. The name matched the one she had crossed out. My stomach dropped. I went back to Tinder immediately. Her profile was still there. Active now. Bio unchanged. I unmasked her instantly. The next day, I got a notification from an unknown number. It was just a photo of a notebook page with my full name written clearly and a small empty box beside it. I didn't realize how important that question was until I saw his face drop. Up until that moment, the date had been normal. Not amazing, not terrible. Just another guy from Tinder who seemed a little awkward but harmless. If I had known that one sentence would change the entire mood of the night, I would have paid more attention to how carefully he asked it. His name was Tyler. His profile was simple. One picture of him at a baseball game, one in front of a mirror, one with a blurry sunset behind him. His bio said he liked quiet nights and staying in. I matched with him because he seemed low drama and kind of shy. We talked for about 2 weeks. He was consistent but not clingy. Asked about my job, what shows I liked, what part of town I live in. I gave him general answers, I always do. He suggested meeting at a small arcade bar called Neon Alley. It's not super loud like most bars. It's more like old pinball machines and vintage arcade cabinets lining the walls. Dim lights, random music playing, that kind of place. I agreed because it's public and usually crowded enough to feel safe. When I walked in, I saw him near one of the pinball machines. He looked like his photos. Light brown hair, average build, wearing a hoodie and jeans. He smiled when he saw me and waved. We played a few games, talked about random stuff. He seemed a little stiff, but nothing alarming. After about 30 minutes, we grabbed drinks and sat at a small high-top table near the back. That's when he asked it. He asked if I lived alone. He didn't ask casually like most guys do. It wasn't part of a bigger conversation about roommates or rent or city life. It was direct, focused. I said no, I live with a roommate. And that's when I saw it. A tiny flicker of disappointment. His shoulders dropped slightly. His smile faded for just a second before he forced it back. He nodded slowly and said that makes sense. But his tone had changed. I asked why he wanted to know. He shrugged and said just curious. Then he asked if my roommate worked late. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. I said sometimes. He asked if she was home most nights. I said it depends. He leaned back in his chair and looked down at his drink. For the first time, he seemed annoyed. Not at me exactly, just at the answer. I tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, but he kept circling back. He asked if our apartment had secure entry. He asked what floor we were on. He asked if we had neighbors close by. Each question came disguised as casual interest. But they weren't casual. They were calculated. I started giving vague answers. He noticed. He tilted his head slightly and asked if I didn't trust him. I laughed it off and said I just don't give out too much personal info on first dates. He nodded, but his jaw tightened. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. He said he prefers when girls live alone. I asked why. He said it makes things easier. Easier for what? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he picked up his phone and checked something. I glanced at the screen for half a second. It looked like a map. I couldn't see details, just a map interface. He locked it quickly. After that, his mood shifted completely. He became distant. Quiet. Barely reacting to what I said. It felt like he had lost interest. Part of me felt relieved, but part of me felt uneasy. After about another 15 minutes, I told him I needed to head home. He didn't argue. He stood up and offered to walk me to my car. I hesitated but agreed because the parking lot behind me and alley can get dark. As we walked outside, I noticed his eyes scanning the lot. Not looking at me. Looking at the cars. When we reached my car, he paused. He asked again if my roommate would be home tonight. I said yes. That was a lie. She was out of town visiting family. But he didn't need to know that. His expression shifted again. Disappointment. Almost frustration. He nodded slowly and said that's too bad. I asked what he meant. He said nothing. Then he stepped back. I got in my car quickly and locked the doors. As I pulled out of the lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was still standing there. Watching. Not waving. Just watching. I drove home with this weird feeling in my chest. Like something had almost happened. When I got to my apartment complex, I noticed a car turning in behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. But when I parked, the car kept driving slowly past my building. Didn't park. Just drove by. I stayed in my car for a minute, pretending to check my phone. The car circled the lot once. Then again. My heart started pounding. I recognized the shape of it. Same dark sedan he had driven. I grabbed my phone and called my roommate even though I knew she wouldn't answer. Just so it looked like someone was on the other end. The car slowed near my building, then stopped briefly. I kept the phone pressed to my ear. The car idled for a few seconds, then drove off. I waited until it was fully out of sight before running inside. Once inside, I locked the door and double-checked every window. I stayed up half the night. The next morning, I opened Tinder. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Deleted. A few days later, I read a post in a local online group. A girl warning others about a guy who asked a lot of questions about living situations and tried to follow her home. The description matched him exactly. She said she lived alone. I don't know what his plan was, but I know one thing. The disappointment on his face when I mentioned my roommate was real. And I'm glad I lied about her being home. Because if he had believed I was alone that night, I don't think he would have just driven away. I should have unmasked her when she sent that first long paragraph about honesty. That's where it started. Not at dinner. Not when she leaned across the table. It started with that message about how she values communication and how disappearing without explanation is the worst thing someone can do. Her name was Brielle. We matched on a Friday night when I was half asleep and just swiping out of habit. Her profile looked normal. A few photos at different coffee shops, one at a beach, one with her hair tied up and a small smile. Her bio said no games, no vanishing acts. I thought that was just her being dramatic. We talked for about a week. She replied fast. Too fast sometimes. If I didn't answer within an hour, she'd send another message asking if I was okay. Not accusing, just checking. I told myself she was just attentive. She suggested we meet at a small late-night bookstore cafe called Paper Moon. It's one of those places that sells used books and coffee, open until 11 p.m. The lighting is soft and yellow. Shelves everywhere. Quiet enough that you can hear the espresso machine hiss. I got there a few minutes early. The place was mostly empty. 2 students near the back, a couple by the window. She walked in exactly at 8 p.m. She looked like her photos. Long dark hair, simple black jacket, jeans. She smiled when she saw me, but it felt measured, like she practiced it. We ordered coffee and sat at a small wooden table between 2 tall shelves. At first, it was fine. She asked about my job. I told her I work in support. She asked where I live. I gave her a general area. She nodded like she already knew it. About 20 minutes in, she brought up ghosting. Out of nowhere. She said she hates it. Said it's the most disrespectful thing someone can do. I nodded, said yeah, it's not great. She leaned forward slightly and asked if I've ever ghosted someone. I admitted that I have, once or twice, when a date just didn't feel right. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes did. They sharpened. She said she used to be more understanding about it. Then she said the last guy who tried it learned something. The way she said learned something made my stomach tighten. I asked what she meant. She smiled faintly and said he thought he could just disappear. She started describing it casually. Said they went on 2 dates. He seemed interested. Then one day he stopped replying. Left her on read. She said she gave him a few days. Then she decided to reach out in person. She described how she found his workplace easily because he had mentioned it in passing. A small gym near downtown. She said she waited in her car across the street and watched him leave one night. Her tone was calm, almost bored. She described following him home. Described how he kept checking his mirrors because he felt something was off. She said he lived alone in a second-floor apartment. I felt my pulse pick up. She went into detail about the building, the stairwell, the broken light near the entrance. Then she said she knocked on his door. He didn't answer, so she waited. She described sitting on the stairwell steps for hours until he finally opened it slightly to see if the hallway was clear. Her voice stayed steady. She said he looked terrified. I asked what happened next. She smiled slightly. Said they had a long conversation about respect. I asked what that meant. She said he apologized. Repeatedly. She said he promised never to do it again. I tried to laugh it off like it was a crazy story, but my laugh sounded forced even to me. She leaned closer. Said some people only understand consequences. Then she described how she made sure he couldn't ignore her again. I didn't like where that was going. I asked what she meant. She described how she created multiple accounts to keep matching with him. How she would appear in different parts of his life. At his gym. At his grocery store. At the cafe near his apartment. She said he eventually moved. But not before learning that disappearing has a cost. My chest felt tight. I asked how she knew he moved. She said she kept checking. The way she said it made it clear she wasn't joking. I asked if she still talks to him. She shook her head slowly. Said he learned. Then she looked at me. Studied my face. Asked if I would ever ghost her. The question hung in the air. I said I don't think so. She asked why not. I said because I don't want drama. She smiled slightly. Said that's good. Then she said something that made my hands go cold. She said I already know where you live. I forced a laugh and asked how. She said you mentioned the park near your building. She listed the only 2 apartment complexes in that area. One has blue balconies. One has a brick facade. She looked at my face carefully. Said you seem like a blue balcony person. My heart started pounding. She wasn't guessing randomly. I do live in the blue balcony building. I tried to keep my face neutral. She leaned back slightly and took a sip of her coffee. Said it's important to understand that people can find things if they want to. I asked if she does this often. She said only when necessary. The room felt smaller. The shelves felt closer. I suddenly realized how quiet the bookstore was. The couple by the window had left. The students were packing up. She asked what time I planned to head home. I said soon. She nodded. Said that's fine. Just don't disappear. Her tone wasn't threatening. It was matter of fact. I paid for my coffee quickly and stood up. She didn't stop me. She smiled politely and said she had a nice time. As I walked toward the door, she called out softly that she hopes I'm not the type to vanish. I didn't answer. Outside, the air felt colder. I walked to my car and got in fast. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. She was standing inside by the window, watching me drive off. That night, I muted her messages instead of unmatching. I responded politely the next day, saying I didn't feel a connection. She replied instantly. Said she appreciates honesty. 2 days later, I got a follow request on social media from a blank account. No photo. No name. Just one message. It said blue balconies suit you. I blocked it. A week after that, I noticed a car parked across from my building 2 nights in a row. Same make and color as hers. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. I never ghosted her. I told her clearly I wasn't interested. She hasn't messaged since. But sometimes when I walk up the stairs to my second-floor apartment, I glance at the landing, just in case someone is sitting there, waiting for a conversation about respect. I knew I shouldn't have told him I walked. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head, not the correction, not the way he said it, just that small decision to say I only lived a few blocks away. If I had said I drove, maybe none of it would have happened. His name was Adrian. We matched on a random Wednesday night when I was bored and half-I reading reviews for a show I wasn't even watching. His profile was simple. One picture of him in a dark jacket leaning against a brick wall. One of him at a night market. Bio said he liked city walks and paying attention to details. I didn't think much about that last line. We talked for about a week. He was polite. Almost too polite. He asked about my job, what part of town I live in, what coffee shops I like. I kept things vague, I always do. We decided to meet at a small Ramen place called Noodle Row near the Arts District. It's tucked between a tattoo studio and a thrift store. Dim lights, narrow seating, open kitchen in the back. It's busy but not loud. The date started fine. He looked like his photos. Dark hair, sharp jaw, calm eyes. He smiled softly when I walked in and stood up immediately like he was rehearsed. We sat at the bar seating facing the kitchen. Steam rising from pots, the smell of broth and garlic everywhere. He was easy to talk to at first. Asked good questions. Remembered details I mentioned days ago. It almost felt impressive. But I noticed something small. Every time I mentioned a place, he would nod in a way that felt like recognition. Not curiosity. Recognition. When I said I like the bookstore near Elm Street, he said it has that broken step near the entrance. When I mentioned the park I sometimes jog in, he said the fountain there hasn't worked in years. It was like he already knew the map of my life. I brushed it off. Maybe he just knows the area well. After dinner, I told him I was heading home. He immediately insisted on walking me. I said it's okay, only a few blocks away. He smiled and said exactly. That word stuck with me. Exactly. We stepped outside. The air was cool and the streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. The Arts District gets quieter at night. Most shops were closing. I started walking toward the left, down a slightly longer route I sometimes take because it's brighter. He stopped for half a second. Then he gently touched my elbow and said that's not the way you go. I froze. I laughed lightly and said I switch it up sometimes. He looked confused. Said no, you usually go right toward the old pharmacy. My heart dropped. I asked what he meant by usually. He hesitated, then smiled faintly like he had said something awkward. Said he just assumed because it's the faster route. I nodded slowly and kept walking left. He walked beside me, but I could feel the tension shift. After about half a block, he spoke again. Said the right turn would shave off at least 2 minutes. I said I don't mind the extra time. He went quiet. The silence felt thick. We passed a closed cafe with metal shutters down. I noticed his reflection in the dark window. He wasn't looking at the street. He was looking at me. I casually asked how he knew the area so well. He said he likes walking at night too. I asked if he lives nearby. He said not far. But he didn't give specifics. We reached the intersection where the shorter route would have turned right. I deliberately kept walking straight. He slowed slightly again, then corrected me again. Said you're going to want to turn soon, or you'll hit the construction zone. I don't know how he knew about that. I hadn't mentioned it, and it wasn't obvious unless you lived there. I felt my chest tighten. I asked how he knew that. He said he pays attention. We kept walking. I decided to test something. Instead of turning at my usual street, I took a random side street I never use. He stopped completely this time. Looked at the street sign. Then at me. Said, "That's not your building." My stomach flipped. I asked what he meant. He corrected himself quickly. Said, "That's not the direction you were headed." I stared at him. The street was quiet. No cars passing, just the hum of distant traffic. I asked if he had been to my building before. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Not inside." That word. Inside. Like he had been outside. My hands felt cold. I said, "I don't think this is a good idea." He smiled slightly. Said, "I was making sure you get home safe." I picked up my pace. He matched it exactly. Perfectly in sync. We reached the end of the random street and had to turn somewhere. I chose another unfamiliar direction. He sighed softly, like I was being difficult. Then he said, "You're making this complicated." I asked, "Complicated for who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped slightly ahead of me and pointed down a darker street. Said, "That's the quickest way." I refused. I turned back toward the brighter main road. That's when his calm expression shifted. Just slightly. His jaw tightened. He asked why I was pretending. Pretending what? He said, "Pretending you don't go the same way every night." My heart was pounding now. I asked how he would know that. He finally said it. Said he's seen me before. Walking. From the ramen place once. From the bookstore another time. He described what I was wearing on a night 2 weeks ago. I felt dizzy. I had never noticed him. He said he likes observing patterns. That word again. Patterns. I stopped walking. Told him I didn't feel comfortable. He stepped closer. Not aggressively, but enough. Said I don't have to act scared. That he just wanted to see if I'd notice. Notice what? He looked around at the empty street. Said that most people don't realize how predictable they are. I stepped back. Told him I was calling someone. He didn't stop me, but he watched carefully. I pulled out my phone and pretended to dial. As I did, I took a few steps toward a small convenience store at the corner that was still open. He noticed. Said, "That's not where you live either." I didn't respond. I walked straight into the store. The bell above the door chimed loudly. The clerk looked up. Adrian stopped at the entrance. He didn't come in. He just stood there for a second, watching. Then he turned and walked away down the street. Not toward where I actually live, but toward the darker route he kept insisting on. I stayed in that store for 15 minutes. When I finally left, I called a ride instead of walking. I haven't walked home alone at night since. A few days later, I noticed his Tinder profile was gone. Deleted. But sometimes when I leave the bookstore or the park or that ramen place, I feel like someone is slightly behind me, matching my pace, waiting for me to turn the way he expects. I should have unmasked her the second she said I barely qualified. Not in a joking way, not in a flirty way. She said it like she was talking about a job application, like I was lucky to be sitting across from her at all. Her name was Celine. We matched on a Sunday night when I was half bored, half tired of swiping. Her profile looked expensive. That's the only way I can describe it. Clean photos. Perfect lighting. One on a rooftop. One at what looked like a private event. Bio said selective, intentional, no time for mediocrity. I almost didn't swipe right, but she matched instantly. We talked for about a week. She was sharp. Asked about my salary in a roundabout way. Asked where I live, what building, what kind of lease. Asked about my long-term goals like she was screening me. I told myself she was just ambitious. She suggested we meet at a place called the Meridian Lounge. It's on the 22nd floor of a downtown tower. Not crazy fancy, but definitely the kind of place where drinks cost $18 and everyone dresses like they're trying to impress someone. I got there first. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. Glass walls, city lights everywhere below. When the doors opened, the lounge was dim with blue lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows. She was already there, sitting alone at a corner table near the glass. She looked exactly like her pictures. Immaculate. Black dress. Hair perfectly styled. Calm expression. She didn't stand when I approached. Just looked me over slowly like she was checking something off in her head. We ordered drinks. The first 20 minutes were normal enough. She asked about my job. I work in software support for a mid-sized company. Nothing flashy. She nodded and asked what my annual income range was. Not exact numbers, just range. I gave her a rough estimate. She didn't react much. Then she leaned back slightly and said something that made my stomach tighten. She said Tinder only shows her qualified matches. I laughed lightly, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh. She said she pays for premium filters. Said she has her settings adjusted carefully. Income range, education level, location radius. She looked at me directly. Said I barely made the cut. The way she said it wasn't playful. It was factual. I didn't know how to respond. I asked what she meant by barely. She picked up her phone and turned it toward me. It was Tinder. Her settings page. She scrolled slowly, showing filters I didn't even know existed. Minimum height, minimum education, minimum job field categories. Then she said she lowered one filter slightly before matching with me. I felt this weird mix of embarrassment and irritation. I asked why. She shrugged. Said she wanted to test variants. Like I was part of an experiment. I tried to brush it off, asked if she was serious. She said she doesn't waste time. Then she did something even stranger. She opened a notes app. It had a list of bullet points. Categories with numbers next to them. Stability. Ambition. Compliance. Risk tolerance. Next to my name was a number beside each. My chest tightened. I asked why my name was there. She said she evaluates people she meets. Keeps records. Improves her selection process. She spoke like this was completely normal. Like everyone does this. I asked how she calculated those numbers. She said through conversation. Through observation. Through background checks. That word hit hard. I asked what she meant by background checks. She smiled faintly. Said most people overshare online. Said it's easy to build a profile beyond Tinder. She mentioned my college. My previous job. The fact that I had moved apartments 2 years ago. Details I hadn't told her. My throat felt dry. I asked how she knew that. She said I'm thorough. Same word from another story in my life. Thorough. She leaned forward slightly. Said I'm on the borderline. Between acceptable and disposable. I stared at her. Asked what disposable meant. She shrugged. Said some matches don't progress. Some are eliminated. Eliminated. The way she said it felt clinical. I tried to laugh it off again. Asked what happens if someone fails her evaluation. She tilted her head slightly. Said sometimes she just unmatches. Sometimes she digs deeper. She asked if I'd ever wondered how much data is tied to a phone number. I didn't answer. She picked up her drink calmly. Said she likes to understand leverage. That word made my pulse spike. I asked if this was some kind of joke. She said no. Said she's tired of wasting time on unqualified candidates. I glanced around the lounge. Couples talking quietly. City lights glowing through the glass. Everything felt normal except our table. She asked if I live alone. I said no, I have a roommate. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She said that lowers your independence score. I almost stood up right then, but I didn't. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I asked what my current score was. She showed me the notes app again. A total at the bottom. 72. I asked out of what? She said 100. I asked what qualifies. She said above 80. I asked why she matched with me if I was under. She said that I told you variance testing. My head felt light. She said you're not the worst. That was supposed to be reassuring. Then she leaned in slightly and said, I'm deciding if you're worth recalibration. I asked what recalibration means. She said influence. Adjustment. Seeing how adaptable someone is. I felt like I wasn't on a date. I was in an interview for something I never applied for. I asked what happens if I don't want to participate in this. She looked genuinely surprised. Said that would be unfortunate. I asked why. She said because I already invested time. And data. I stood up. Told her I didn't think this was a good match. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched calmly. As I walked away, she called out softly that most people don't realize when they're being evaluated. I didn't look back. The elevator ride down felt endless. When I got to the street, I checked Tinder immediately. Her profile was still there. Active. Bio updated. Now it said refining criteria. Distance less than 1 mile. The next morning, I noticed something strange. My LinkedIn profile had a new anonymous viewer. My social media privacy settings had been probed. 2 login attempts on an old email account. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. A week later, I read a post in a forum about a woman who runs compatibility experiments on dating apps. People speculating about data harvesting. I don't know if it was her, but I deleted Tinder after that. Sometimes I still think about that number. 72. And how casually she said I barely made the cut. I thought it was just my phone overheating. That's how it started. A tiny glitch. A flicker on the screen while I was mid-sentence. If it had frozen or crashed, I wouldn't even remember that night. But it didn't crash. It showed me something instead. Her name was Nadia. We matched on a Thursday night when I was laying in bed scrolling without thinking. Her profile wasn't flashy. 1 picture at a street fair, 1 at a bowling alley, 1 close-up selfie with messy hair and no filter. Her bio said spontaneous but punctual. That part didn't register until later. We talked for about 5 days. She was easygoing. Didn't ask too many personal questions. Didn't overshare. She suggested meeting at a night market that pops up near the river every other weekend. Food trucks, string lights, live acoustic music, that kind of vibe. I agreed because it's public and busy. When I got there around 8 p.m., the place was packed. Music playing from a small stage. People lining up for tacos and fried desserts. The air smelled like grilled meat and sugar. She was standing near a lemonade stand, waving when she saw me. She looked exactly like her photos. Brown jacket, ripped jeans, hair tied back. She smiled naturally, not stiff or forced. The first hour was actually good. We walked around, tried different food, joked about overpriced drinks. Nothing weird. Nothing off. At one point, we sat at a long wooden bench near the edge of the river. The lights reflected on the water. It felt normal. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced down without thinking. It was Tinder, which was strange because I had already closed the app earlier. The screen flashed white for a split second. Then it changed. Instead of the usual interface, it displayed a black screen with a large digital timer in the center. 0:59:59. And right above it, in small white text, was my full name. Not my first name. My full name. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I'd opened the wrong app. Some weird ad. But the Tinder logo was faintly visible in the corner. The timer ticked down to 0:59:58. My stomach tightened. I tapped the screen. Nothing happened. I closed the app. Reopened it. The timer was still there. 0:59:51. Counting down in real time. I looked up at Nadia. She was watching me. Not confused. Just watching. I asked if her app ever glitches. She tilted her head slightly and asked what I meant. I turned the phone toward her. She leaned closer. Her expression didn't change. She said that's weird. But her tone was flat. The timer kept ticking. 0:59:32. I tried turning my phone off completely. When it powered back on, Tinder opened automatically. The timer was now at 0:59:10. My chest felt tight. I asked if she had ever seen something like that. She shrugged. Said maybe it's a new feature. I laughed nervously. Said a countdown labeled with my name doesn't feel like a feature. She didn't respond. Instead, she checked her own phone. Her screen looked normal from what I could see. Regular Tinder interface. She showed it briefly. No timer. Just her matches. Then she said maybe it's personalized. That word hit wrong. Personalized. The timer hit 0:58:47. I felt like everyone around us suddenly looked farther away. The noise of the market felt muffled. I asked what happens when it hits 0. She smiled slightly. Said, guess we'll find out. My heart was pounding now. I tried deleting the app entirely. As soon as it uninstalled, my screen went black for a second. Then it reopened. Timer still there. 0:58:12. I checked my data connection. Turned off Wi-Fi. Switched to airplane mode. Nothing stopped it. It kept ticking. I looked back at her. She seemed calmer now. Almost curious. She asked how much time was left. I told her. She nodded slowly. Said that's plenty. Plenty for what? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she suggested we take a walk away from the crowd. Said it might help clear my head. I hesitated, but I didn't want to cause a scene. We walked toward the darker end of the river path where the food trucks ended and the street lights were spaced farther apart. The timer hit 0:55:03. I felt every second. I asked if this was some kind of prank. She said she doesn't do pranks. Her tone was steady. We reached a quieter stretch near a dock. Only a couple sitting far down the path. The market noise barely audible now. I looked at my phone again. 0:53:41. My name's still glowing above it. I asked if she had anything to do with this. She stopped walking. Turned to face me. Said, why would I? I pointed at the screen. Said this started right after we sat down. She looked at the phone carefully. Then said maybe it's measuring compatibility. I stared at her. That didn't make sense. She stepped closer. Asked if I feel different. I said no, just stressed. She said sometimes time pressure reveals who someone really is. I didn't like that. The timer hit 0:50:00. Exactly. The numbers felt deliberate. She asked if I had told anyone where I was tonight. I said yes. That was half true. She nodded. Said good. Then she said something that made my throat go dry. She said most people panic around the 40-minute mark. I asked what she meant. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the dock. Said we should sit for a minute. I refused. I said I think I need to go. She looked disappointed. Said you still have time. The way she said time felt heavy. I turned to walk back toward the market. She grabbed my wrist lightly. Not aggressively, but enough. Said running won't stop it. I pulled my hand away. The timer hit 0:47:19. I started walking faster. She followed. Not chasing. Just matching my pace. She said you're reacting earlier than most. Most. That word echoed. I asked what she meant by most. She said nothing. Just smiled slightly. We reached the edge of the market again. Crowds. Noise. Lights. I felt a small wave of relief. I told her I'm leaving. She didn't try to stop me this time. She just said watch what happens at 0. I didn't respond. I walked straight to my car. Got inside. Locked the doors. The timer was at 0:42:08. I drove home with one hand on the wheel and one eye on the screen. It kept ticking. When I got inside my apartment, I set the phone on the table and just stared at it. 0:31:44. I considered calling the police, but what would I even say? My dating app has a timer with my name on it. As it hit 0:10:00, my heart felt like it was in my throat. At 0100, I stood up. At 0:10, I held my breath. At 0:00, the screen went completely black. Then it returned to normal. Regular Tinder interface. No timer. No message. Nothing. I had opened my matches. Nadia was gone. Not unmatched. Gone. Deleted. The next morning, I read a small article online. A guy reported missing after leaving a night market near the river the week before. Last seen walking toward the docks. I don't know if it's connected. I don't know what the timer meant. But sometimes when I open Tinder now, the app lags for half a second. And I swear I see numbers flicker on the screen before it loads. Like it's waiting to start again. I didn't even realize she had unmatched me at first. I was mid-sentence, literally talking, and she just picked up her phone, tapped a few times, and smiled like she had just cleared a notification. That smile is what messed me up. Not nervous. Not awkward. Calm. Relieved. Her name was Isla. We matched on a random Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. Her profile was simple, but kind of intense. Close-up photo with direct eye contact. One blurry one taken at night. Bio said tired of pretending. I thought that just meant she didn't like games. We talked for about a week. She was blunt. Asked real questions right away. What do you actually want? Are you honest with yourself? Do you lie to make people comfortable? I answered casually. Thought she was just trying to be deep. She suggested meeting at a place called the Lantern Yard. It's this outdoor courtyard bar behind an old brick building downtown. String lights overhead, fire pits, long wooden tables. It's busy but spread out enough to feel private. I got there first. Around 9 p.m., the place was packed, but not chaotic. Groups of people laughing, music low in the background. She walked in a few minutes later. She looked exactly like her photos. Dark hair, steadied eyes, simple black jacket. She didn't wave. Just walked straight toward me and sat down. At first, it was normal. We ordered drinks. Talked about work. I told her I live in a small apartment near the train tracks. She nodded like she already knew that part. She asked if I ever lie on dating apps. I laughed and said probably a little like everyone. She didn't laugh. She asked what I lie about. I said nothing major, just exaggerating hobbies sometimes. She stared at me for a few seconds too long. Then she picked up her phone. I thought she was checking the message. Instead, she opened Tinder. I saw my profile picture reflected in her screen. She tapped something. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't think much of it until she put her phone down and smiled. Then she said, "Now we can be honest." I pulled my phone out. Tinder notification. You have been unmatched. I looked up at her. She was still sitting there, right in front of me. I asked why she unmatched me. She shrugged lightly. Said it removes the record. My stomach tightened. I asked what record. She said the digital one. Said now there's no chat history. No timestamp. No official connection. Just two people sitting at a table. I didn't like how she said official. I tried to joke and said that's a little dramatic. She leaned forward slightly. Said you'd be surprised how much people rely on apps to feel safe. I asked if this was some kind of test. She smiled faintly. Said no, this is just the part where we stop pretending. The fire pit next to us crackled loudly. A group nearby laughed at something. Everything felt normal except our table. She asked if I told anyone I was meeting her. I said yeah, a friend knows. She asked if they had her profile. I hesitated. She noticed. Her smile widened slightly. Said that's what I thought. I asked why she cared. She said because now we can talk without filters. I didn't know what that meant. She said when you're matched, you're still performing. Still curating. Now that she unmatched me, there's no more need for that. I asked what she wanted to talk about. She looked directly into my eyes. Said I know more about you than what you put in your bio. My chest tightened. I asked what she meant. She listed my old job from 3 years ago. Mentioned the fact that I used to post about running but stopped. Said I don't actually live alone. That one hit hard. I do live with a roommate. I'd never told her that. I asked how she knew. She said public records and observation. Observation. That word again in my life. She leaned back. Said she'd seen me before. At the grocery store near my apartment. At the train platform last month. I felt cold even though the fire pit was right next to us. I asked why she didn't say anything then. She said because it's more interesting when someone doesn't realize they're being watched. My heart was pounding now. I glanced around. People everywhere, but none paying attention to us. She said unmatching removes the safety net. Now it's just honesty. I asked what she wanted. She said she wanted to see how I'd react without the app as a shield, without the option to block or report through a screen. I told her I could still leave. She nodded. Said of course you can, but that wouldn't be honest. I didn't understand what she meant by honest. She leaned in slightly. Said I know your building has cameras in the lobby but not in the stairwell. My throat went dry. I had mentioned cameras once in passing but not details like that. She said the side entrance is rarely used. That's true. She said your roommate works late on Thursdays. It was Thursday. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. I asked if she had been near my building. She didn't answer directly. She just said when you unmatch someone, it's like wiping fingerprints. No shared history. No trace of conversation. Just memory. I stood up abruptly. Said I didn't like this. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched. Said you can walk away. But we both know you won't forget this. I backed away from the table slowly. She stayed seated. Calm. Watching. I walked through the courtyard toward the exit. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I opened Tinder again just to check. She was completely gone. Not even in my previous matches. Like she never existed. When I stepped onto the street, I glanced back once. She was still sitting there by the fire pit, but her chair looked empty for half a second. Then she was there again. I don't know if that was just my brain messing with me. I didn't go straight home. I drove around for an hour. When I finally pulled into my apartment lot, I checked the side entrance. Closed. Dark. But as I walked up to my building, I noticed something small. A new scratch near the handle of the side door. Like someone had tried it recently. I haven't seen her since. But sometimes when I check Tinder out of boredom, I wonder if she's out there unmatching someone else mid-sentence. Smiling. Saying now we can be honest. I knew something was wrong when my phone buzzed and he didn't even glance down at his. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. The way he kept eye contact with me while my screen lit up. Like he already knew what it said. Like he was waiting for me to read it. His name was Grant. We matched on a random Saturday afternoon when I was sitting at home doing nothing. His profile was simple. One photo at a coffee shop, one hiking, one blurry mirror pic. Bio said calm energy only. We talked for about a week. He seemed normal. Not too intense. Not too dry. Asked about my job. I told him I work at a small marketing firm. He asked what part of town I live in. I gave him a general area, nothing specific. He suggested meeting at a place called Old Harbor Grill. It's a seafood spot near the water, kind of dim inside. Booths along the walls, big windows facing the docks. It's popular but not loud. I agreed because it felt safe, public, busy. He was already there when I walked in. Sitting in a booth near the back, facing the entrance. He stood up when he saw me, smiled, shook my hand instead of going for a hug. I appreciated that. The first 30 minutes were normal. We ordered food. Talked about work, travel, random stuff. He had the steady way of speaking, never rushed, never awkward. But I noticed something small. He kept his phone in his lap under the table. Not on the table. Not in his pocket. In his lap. His hands would move slightly every now and then. I assumed he was just checking notifications. About 40 minutes in and I started feeling off. Not because he said anything weird. It was more the way he watched me, like he was studying my reactions. I mentioned I had to be up early the next morning. He nodded but didn't comment. Then my phone buzzed. It was on the table next to my plate. The vibration made a small rattling sound against the wood. I glanced down automatically. Tinder notification. New message from Grant. My stomach dropped. He was sitting right there. I slowly opened the app. The message read, "Don't make a scene." I felt like all the air left my body. I looked up at him instantly. He was looking directly at me. Not at his phone. At me. He tilted his head slightly, almost like he was checking if I understood. I asked if he just sent me that. He shrugged casually and said maybe. My heart started pounding. I asked why he would message me instead of just saying something. He leaned back in the booth slightly. Said sometimes it's better to communicate quietly. I felt heat rise in my chest. I asked what he meant by "don't make a scene." He said you looked like you were about to. I hadn't moved. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even reacted visibly. But somehow he had predicted it. I told him I wasn't going to make a scene. He nodded slowly. Said good. Then he picked up his drink like nothing had happened. I checked Tinder again. Our chat history was still there. Just that one new message. I typed back, "Why would I make a scene?" Before I could hit send, he spoke. Said I wouldn't respond there. I froze. He said it's better if the message just sits. Like a reminder. I asked a reminder of what? He glanced around the restaurant. Said of where we are. Public. People watching. He leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. Said nobody would assume anything is wrong unless you force them to. My hands felt cold. I suddenly became hyper-aware of the restaurant. The couple at the next table laughing. The waiter carrying plates past us. The low music playing overhead. Everything looked normal, but our booth felt sealed off. I asked if he was threatening me. He smiled faintly. Said no, just advising. My phone buzzed again. Another Tinder message. From him. It read, "Stay calm." I looked at him. His hands were still resting on the table now, not holding his phone. I asked how he was sending messages without touching it. He didn't answer directly. He just said, "You're starting to breathe faster." I tried to steady myself. I asked what he wanted. He said nothing dramatic. Just honesty. He said, "I noticed you lied earlier." My chest tightened. I asked about what. He said about living alone. I never told him I lived alone, but I also never mentioned my roommate. He said you hesitated when I asked if anyone was home tonight. I didn't even remember hesitating. He leaned back again. Said it's small things like that. I felt trapped. Not physically, but socially. If I stood up suddenly, people would stare. If I accused him loudly, I'd look unstable. My phone buzzed again. "Don't stand up." I hadn't moved. I looked at him. He was smiling faintly. I whispered, "How are you doing this?" He said apps can be unpredictable. That answer made no sense. I opened his Tinder profile from our chat. It showed active now. Distance less than 1 mile. Bio unchanged. But his location dot on the small map inside the app wasn't just at the restaurant. It was slightly behind it. Near the docks. I felt dizzy. I looked back at him. He was still in front of me. I asked if he came alone. He paused for a fraction of a second, then said, "Of course." My phone buzzed again. "Look behind you." I felt a wave of fear. I didn't want to, but I did. I turned slowly in the booth. Through the window, I could see the docks, and a man standing near the railing outside, looking directly at our window. He looked similar to Grant. Same build, same jacket, but slightly different posture. I turned back to Grant. He was watching my face carefully. Said, "You see him now." I asked who that was. He shrugged slightly. Said, "Sometimes it's helpful to have perspective." My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my phone and typed, "I'm calling someone." Before I could press send, another message popped up. "Don't." I stood up anyway. He didn't grab me. He didn't raise his voice. He just sat there calmly. As I stepped out of the booth, he said softly that if I shout, I'll regret it. Not loud enough for anyone else to hear. Just enough for me. I walked toward the restroom area instead of the exit. Locked myself inside. My phone kept buzzing. Stay inside. You're safer there. I called my friend immediately. Told her everything in a rushed whisper. When I came out 5 minutes later, our booth was empty. Grant was gone. I rushed outside. The man by the docks was gone too. I checked Tinder. Our match was still there, but the messages were gone. Completely erased. No record of "Don't make a scene." Just our earlier conversation. I left immediately. I have been back to Old Harbor Grill since. Sometimes I still get random Tinder notifications late at night. No name attached. Just a message preview that says stay calm. When I open the app, there's nothing there. I knew the night was over the second she turned her phone around and I saw my own words on her screen. Not words I had typed. Words I hadn't even thought yet. Her name was Mira. We matched on a random Monday evening when I was half watching a show and half swiping without thinking. Her profile had this quiet vibe. One picture at a bus stop in the rain, one in a bookstore, one blurry one at night. Her bio said I plan ahead. I thought that meant she liked schedules. We talked for about a week. She was thoughtful. Asked about my routines. What I usually say when I'm upset. How I react when someone accuses me of something unfair. I joked that she was interviewing me for a future argument. She replied that arguments are predictable if you pay attention. That should have been enough for me to unmatch. Instead, we planned a date. She picked a place called the Observatory Cafe. It's on the top floor of an old science museum that only opens at night once a month for special events. The cafe sits under a glass dome. You can see the sky above if it's clear. It sounded cool and different, so I agreed. When I got there around 8 p.m., the building was dim except for the top floor lights. The elevator ride up felt strange because the rest of the museum was dark and silent. She was already seated at a small table near the glass dome. She looked like her photos. Long dark hair, calm expression, simple sweater. She smiled softly when she saw me. The first hour felt normal. We talked about work. I told her I live in a small apartment near the university. She asked how I get irritated easily. I laughed and said only when I'm tired. She nodded like she was confirming something. We ordered coffee. The dome above us showed a cloudy sky with faint stars breaking through. About 45 minutes in, she went quiet mid-conversation. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. I thought she was checking a message. Instead, she turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between her and me. My name at the top. Her name under it. The messages were detailed. Long paragraphs. The timestamp at the top said 3 weeks from now. My stomach tightened. I told her that's not real. She calmly said not yet. I looked closer. The messages showed an argument. She accusing me of lying about where I was one night. Me responding defensively. The words sounded like something I might say, but I hadn't said them. Not in real life. Not in any message. She scrolled down. Another screenshot. This one showing me saying I think we need space. Her replying that I always run when things get uncomfortable. The timestamp again was in the future. I felt cold. I asked what this was. She said these are likely outcomes. I laughed nervously and said it's not funny. She didn't laugh. She asked if I wanted to change my response. That sentence hit differently. Change my response. Like the future argument was already written. Like I was being offered a revision. I told her this didn't make sense. She said she studies patterns. Said conversations follow structures. Said people repeat themselves more than they realize. She tapped one of the screenshots. Said this is where you get defensive. She showed me the exact sentence I supposedly sent. I don't appreciate being accused. That is something I would say. I have said it before. Just not to her. I asked how she made these. She said I didn't. She said I simulated them. Simulated. My heart was pounding now. I told her I don't like this. She tilted her head slightly and said, "You will say that in about 2 minutes." I stared at her. She checked her phone. Said, "Actually, maybe 1 minute." I opened my mouth to speak, and I heard myself say, "I don't like this." The exact words. Her eyes flicked up from her phone to me. She nodded slightly, like she had just confirmed a prediction. I felt dizzy. I asked if this was some kind of psychological trick. She shrugged. Said we're all predictable under pressure. She swiped to another screenshot. This one showed me standing up from a table. A message from me that read, "I can't do this." I looked down at my hands. They were gripping the edge of the table. I asked how far ahead she had mapped this. She said about 6 months. 6 months. We had only known each other a week. She said relationships are algorithms. Input and output. She said if I stay calm now, the later argument shifts slightly. She showed another screenshot. Same argument, but slightly different wording. In this version, I apologize first. In that version, she said things last longer. I felt like I was being tested in real time. I asked what happens if I walk away now. She scrolled further down. Another screenshot. This one showed a message thread ending abruptly. My name blocked. Her last message saying you could have chosen differently. The timestamp was 2 days from now. My throat felt dry. I asked if she does this with everyone. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said most people don't ask to see the future. I asked where she got my texting style from. She said you give more away than you think. Public posts. Comments. The way you phrase things. She leaned in slightly. Said your arguments are already written. I felt trapped in something invisible. Like every word I said was feeding into her next prediction. I tried to change the script. I told her I think this is ridiculous and I'm not that predictable. She smiled slightly. Showed another screenshot. In it, I say exactly that. Word for word. My stomach dropped. The timestamp was 4 minutes ahead of now. I checked the time. It matched. I felt a strange mix of anger and fear. I asked if she staged this somehow. She said no. Said she's just good at modeling behavior. Modeling. Like I was data. She leaned back. Said we're approaching the moment where you stand up. I stayed seated out of pure stubbornness. She looked surprised for a second. Then she checked her phone. Scrolled. Said interesting. The path adjusted. She showed me a new screenshot. In this version, I stay seated but go quiet. Then eventually say we need to slow down. The timestamp was 10 minutes ahead. I didn't know what to say anymore. Every word felt dangerous. Like it would confirm something she'd already written. The dome above us reflected our table in the glass. For a second, I imagined seeing future versions of us up there, arguing silently under the stars. I finally stood up. Not because she predicted it, but because I needed air. She didn't try to stop me. She just said softly, "You still have time to change it." I walked for the elevator. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from her. Sent while she was still sitting at the table. It read, "You always leave at this point." I didn't look back. When I reached the ground floor, I checked Tinder. Her profile was gone. No match. No messages. Like she never existed. Later that night, I found something strange. In my phone gallery. A screenshot I didn't take. Of a text argument between us. Timestamped 2 weeks from now. My words typed out clearly. I don't know if she somehow accessed my phone. I don't know if I'm just overthinking. But sometimes when I start typing a message to someone and I pause, I wonder if I'm following a script I haven't seen yet. And if somewhere she's already scrolling through the next version of me. I should have pretended I didn't see it. If I had just ignored that split second Maybe the night would have stayed awkward instead of turning into something I still think about every time my phone buzzes. His name was Victor. We matched on a random Thursday afternoon while I was waiting for my laundry to finish. His profile was clean and minimal. One photo in a suit at what looked like a wedding, one hiking, one sitting in a car with sunglasses on. His bio said strategic and selective. I thought that just meant he was picky. We talked for about a week. He was confident but not cocky. Asked about my job. I told him I work at a small design studio. He asked what time I usually get off work. I told him around 6 most days. He asked if I live alone. I said yes. He paused for a while after that message. Then he suggested meeting in a place called Iron Gate Brewery. It's an industrial-looking bar near the old train yard. Brick walls, metal beams, long wooden tables. It's usually loud but not chaotic. I agree because it's busy enough to feel safe. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting at the far end of a long table near the back wall. He stood up when he saw me, gave a quick smile, and motioned for me to sit. He looked like his photos. Calm, neat haircut, steady posture. He had this calm, controlled way of moving that made everything he did seem intentional. The first half hour felt normal. We talked about work, hobbies, travel. He listened closely, like he was storing everything. But I noticed he didn't share much about himself. When I asked about his job, he said he works in security consulting. I asked what that meant. He said assessing vulnerabilities. That should have been enough to make me uncomfortable. But I laughed and said that sounds intense. He smiled faintly and said it depends on the target. I thought he meant corporate clients. About 40 minutes in, his phone buzzed loudly on the table. It wasn't a soft vibration. It was a sharp notification sound that cut through the noise. His screen lit up before he could flip it. I saw it clearly. Target locked. In bold letters. No app icon I recognized. Just a plain black notification with white text. He quickly turned the phone face down. Too quickly. He looked up at me and smiled like nothing happened. I felt my stomach tighten. I asked what that was. He shrugged and said work stuff. I asked why it said target locked. He laughed lightly and said that's just how the app phrases things. The app. I asked what app. He picked up his drink instead of answering. The noise of the brewery felt louder suddenly. People laughing. Glasses clinking. Music playing overhead. But our end of the table felt sealed off. I tried to move past it. Asked him what kind of vulnerabilities he assesses. He said mostly personal ones. I didn't like that answer. My phone buzzed. I flinched. It was just a text from my friend asking how the date was. I typed back fine. He watched me type. Not in a jealous way. More like observing. He asked if I usually tell friends where I am. I said yeah sometimes. He nodded slowly. Said that's smart. Then his phone buzzed again. This time he grabbed it instantly and slid it into his jacket pocket before I could see the screen. I felt my heart pounding. I asked if everything was okay. He said yes, just confirming something. Confirming what? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if I walked here or drove. I said I drove. He nodded like he had expected that. Then he asked where I parked. I lied and said the main lot across the street. He paused slightly. Said that lot closes early. I hadn't known that. I felt exposed. I asked how he knew. He said he checks details. Of course he does. I excused myself to go to the restroom. In the mirror, I looked pale. I debated leaving right then, but I didn't want to overreact. When I came back, he was typing on his phone. As I sat down, he locked it. I tried to act normal. Asked about his last project. He said sometimes clients hire him to observe behavior. I asked what kind of behavior. He said patterns. Routines. Blind spots. My throat felt dry. I asked if he ever feels uncomfortable doing that. He looked genuinely confused. Said, why would I? His phone buzzed again. This time he didn't react fast enough. The screen lit up face up on the table. I saw part of the notification. Status, tracking active. He grabbed it quickly and turned it face down again. My heart started racing. I asked what that meant. He leaned forward slightly and lowered his voice. Said, I think you're misreading things. I said, am I? He smiled faintly. Said you look nervous. I said, maybe because your phone keeps saying things like target locked. He didn't deny it this time. He just studied me. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. Said it doesn't mean harm. It just means confirmation. Confirmation of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if I ever feel like someone could map your entire day without you noticing. I forced a laugh and said no. He said that's interesting. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my friend. I used it as an excuse. Told him I needed to step outside to take a call. He didn't stop me. As I walked toward the exit, I felt his eyes on me. Outside, the air was cool and loud with distant train sounds. I called my friend immediately and told her everything. She told me to leave. I said I would. When I walked toward my car, I noticed something. A small black SUV parked 2 spaces away. Engine running. Windows tinted. My heart pounded. I got into my car quickly and locked the doors. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed. Tinder notification. Victor sent you a message. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The message read you shouldn't run before the assessment is complete. I looked up through my windshield. Victor was standing outside the brewery now, watching the parking lot, his phone in his hand. The SUV's headlights turned on. I didn't wait. I reversed quickly and pulled out onto the street. The SUV pulled out behind me. My heart felt like it was in my throat. I drove straight to the police station 3 miles away. The SUV stopped following me after 2 turns. When I checked Tinder again, his profile was gone. Not unmatched. Deleted. I never heard from him again. But sometimes when my phone buzzes unexpectedly, I think about that notification. Target locked. And I wonder how many other people saw it before he flipped his phone face down. I didn't think anything of it when Tinder stopped showing me new matches. I actually thought it was a glitch, or maybe I had swiped through everyone nearby. It wasn't until she said thank you for cooperating that I realized it wasn't a glitch at all. Her name was Lara. We matched on a random Wednesday night when I was sitting on my couch half reading an article and half swiping. Her profile looked almost too polished. Clean photos, neutral expressions, simple backgrounds. Her bio said optimized for compatibility. I thought it was just another tech joke. We talked for about 2 weeks. She was calm, never rushed, asked very specific questions. What time I wake up, what time I usually sleep, how often I go out on weekends, whether I prefer routine or spontaneity. It felt like she was building a profile, and I told myself everyone does that in some way. The weird part started when I realized Tinder wasn't showing me anyone else after we started talking seriously. No new profiles, just the same old ones I had already swiped past. I joked about it to her one night. She responded that maybe the app thinks you found what you were looking for. I laughed and said I doubt the algorithm is that smart. She said it's smarter than people think. We decided to meet at a place called Silverlight Cinema. It's one of those old movie theaters that plays classic films late at night. Dim red lights, old velvet seats, almost empty most weekdays. I got there early. The lobby smelled like popcorn and carpet cleaner. Only a handful of people scattered around. She walked in exactly at 9 p.m. She looked like her pictures. Straight black hair, pale skin, neutral expression. She smiled softly, but didn't quite reach her eyes. We bought tickets and went inside. The theater was almost empty. Maybe 5 other people spread out. We sat in the middle row. The movie started, but I barely paid attention. I kept thinking about the app glitch. Halfway through the movie, she leaned slightly toward me and asked if Tinder had shown me anyone new lately. I told her no. She nodded slowly. Said good. That word stuck. Good. I asked why good. She said because that means it's stabilizing. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. I asked what stabilizing meant. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked if I had tried logging out and back in. I said no. She said you don't need to. Her tone wasn't joking. It was certain. After the movie ended, we walked out into the quiet street. The night air felt colder than it should have. We stopped near a streetlight. She pulled out her phone. Then she looked at me and said, "Thank you for cooperating." I froze. Cooperating with what? She smiled gently and said the app will stop suggesting replacements now. My heart started pounding. I asked what she meant by replacements. She tilted her head slightly. Said alternative matches. Candidates. My throat felt dry. I told her I hadn't agreed to anything like that. She said you didn't have to. She said your engagement patterns confirmed selection. Selection. I asked if this was some kind of experiment. She said not exactly. She said it's more of a refinement process. I asked what happens to people who aren't selected. She paused. Then said they keep swiping. The way she said it made it sound like that was the worst outcome. I pulled out my phone and opened Tinder. The app loaded normally. But when I went to the swipe screen, there were no profiles. Just a blank page with a small message at the bottom. No new suggestions available. I refreshed. Nothing. I checked my filters. Everything was normal. I felt a wave of panic. I asked what she did. She said I didn't do anything. You did. I asked how. She said by responding consistently. By meeting in person. By confirming identity. Her words felt clinical, like she was describing a process. I asked what happens now. She stepped closer. Said now the testing phase ends. Testing phase. My chest tightened. I asked what that means. She said the app won't interfere anymore. I didn't understand. She explained calmly. Said sometimes when people aren't sure about someone, the app introduces alternatives. To compare engagement. To measure retention. She looked at my phone. Said you stopped seeing alternatives because your behavior signaled commitment. I told her that's not how Tinder works. She smiled faintly. Said you'd be surprised what works quietly. I checked the app again. Still no new profiles. I asked if she was some kind of developer or something. She laughed softly. Said no. Just compliant. Compliant with what? She didn't answer. Instead, she asked if I'd noticed fewer ads lately too. I hadn't. But now that she mentioned it, I realized I hadn't seen a single ad in days. She said that's part of it. I felt dizzy. I asked what exactly I cooperated with. She said the evaluation. Evaluation for what? She looked at me carefully. Said long-term suitability. The street felt too quiet. No cars passing. Just the hum of distant traffic. I said I didn't sign up for that. She said everyone does when they install it. I told her this sounds insane. She shrugged lightly. Said that's what most people say at this stage. Stage? I asked how many stages there are. She didn't answer. Instead, she asked if I've received fewer notifications lately. I checked. She was right. No new match alerts. No random likes. Just her. Only her. She smiled again and said the replacements are no longer necessary. My heart felt like it was pounding in my ears. I told her I think I'm going to head home. She nodded. Said that's fine. You're already confirmed. Confirmed for what? She didn't answer. I walked to my car feeling that the ground was slightly unsteady. When I got inside, I opened Tinder again. Still blank. No profiles. No suggestions. Just my matches list. And only one name in it. Ilara. Distance less than 1 mile. Active now. I drove home fast. Once inside my apartment, I tried deleting the app. It deleted normally. I reinstalled it. Logged back in. Same thing. No new profiles. Just her. The next morning, I read through forums online. People complaining about running out of matches. People joking about algorithms. But nothing like this. 2 days later, I tried swiping again. Still blank. I messaged her asking what's going on. She replied instantly. Said adjustments take time. Adjustments. I haven't seen a new profile since that night. It's been 3 weeks. Every time I open Tinder, it's just her. Active now. Distance fluctuating between 1 mile and less than 1 mile. I don't know what I cooperated with. But sometimes when my phone buzzes with a notification from her, I think about that word. Replacements. And I wonder what happens to people who don't cooperate. I thought deleting the app would be the end of it. That's what everyone says to do, right? Block, delete, move on. I did all of that. I watched the icon disappear from my screen. I even restarted my phone like that would wipe out whatever weird energy was attached to it. It still wasn't enough. His name was Rowan. We matched on a random Friday night when I was sitting in my apartment half bored and half annoyed at myself for re-downloading Tinder again. His profile was simple. 2 photos, both taken outside at night. One under a streetlight, one in a parking lot. Bio said I don't believe in coincidences. I almost swiped left just because of that line. But I didn't. We talked for about 4 days. He was quiet but intense. Short messages, but always timed perfectly. If I took 5 minutes to reply, he replied in 5. If I waited an hour, he waited an hour. It felt like he was mirroring me. He asked where I live. I gave a general area, nothing specific. He asked what building. I ignored that question. He didn't push, but I noticed he started referencing places near my neighborhood casually. Like the late-night taco truck near the corner, the one that's only there on weekends. I had never mentioned that. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown called Ember Room. It's small, dim, mostly brick walls and low lighting. Not crowded on weeknights. When I walked in, he was already there. Sitting at a corner table near the window. He looked like his photos. Dark hoodie, sharp eyes, calm posture. He stood up when he saw me and gave a small nod instead of a smile. The first 20 minutes were normal enough. We talked about work. I told him I work at a design studio. He said he does freelance tech consulting. He asked if I ever feel like apps know too much. I laughed and said they probably do. He nodded slowly and said more than you think. That's when I started feeling uneasy. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. Like it wasn't a theory. Like it was personal. Halfway through the date, my phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. Even though I was sitting right across from him. It said Rowan updated his profile. I opened it. His bio now read proximity achieved. My stomach tightened. I looked up at him. He was watching me. Not surprised. I asked why he changed his bio. He shrugged lightly and said I felt like it. I tried to brush it off. But my heart was racing. I told him I think I'm going to head out early. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Said that's fine. As I stood up, my phone buzzed again. Another Tinder message from him. It read don't rush. I felt exposed. He hadn't touched his phone. It was sitting on the table in front of him. Face up. Screen dark. I asked how he sent that. He said maybe it's delayed. That answer made no sense. I left anyway. Walked straight to my car. Locked the doors. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed again. Another message. You forgot to block me. I immediately opened Tinder and blocked him. Then I deleted the app. Completely. Watched it vanish from my screen. I drove home feeling tense but relieved. Like I had taken control back. When I got inside my apartment, I locked the door and sat on my couch. I kept glancing at my phone like it might do something else. It stayed quiet. For about 5 minutes. Then the screen lit up. No app icon. No familiar notification sound. Just a black screen with white text. Match confirmed. Location shared. My full name underneath it. I felt my chest tighten so hard it hurt. I tapped at the screen. It didn't open an app. It just stayed there. Match confirmed. Location shared. Then a small map appeared below the text. A blue dot. My exact building. I couldn't breathe properly. I had deleted Tinder. I had blocked him. This was impossible. The map zoomed out slightly. Another red dot appeared, about 3 blocks away, moving, slowly, toward my building. My hands were shaking. I turned off my phone completely, held the power button until the screen went black. Silence. I sat there in the dark for what felt like forever. Then the phone vibrated in my hand. Even though it was off, the screen lit up again. Same message. Match confirmed. Location shared. The red dot was closer now. 2 blocks away. I felt sick. I ran to the window and peeked through the blinds. The street below looked normal. A couple of parked cars. One streetlight flickering. Then I saw headlights turn the corner at the end of my block. A dark car moving slowly. Too slowly. My phone buzzed again. The red dot was directly in front of my building now. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I didn't know what to do. Call the police and say what? My dating app says someone locked onto my location. I grabbed my phone and opened settings, trying to disable location services entirely. The screen froze. Then the message changed. Access persistent. I felt like I was going to pass out. There was a knock at the building's main entrance downstairs. Not loud. Just one solid knock. I live on the 3rd floor. I froze. Another knock. Then my phone buzzed again. Entry pending. I ran to the door and locked the deadbolt. Then I heard footsteps in the stairwell. Slow. Measured. Coming up. My building stairwell doesn't have cameras. I know that. He had asked me about that. My phone buzzed again. Floor 3. I felt like my lungs were collapsing. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Silence. Then a soft knock. Not aggressive. Just controlled. My phone buzzed. Match complete. I stood there frozen. The knock came again. Softer this time. Then his voice through the door. Calm. Saying he just wants to talk. I didn't move. I didn't respond. After what felt like hours, the footsteps retreated. Slowly back down the stairs. I waited another 20 minutes before checking the window again. The dark car was gone. My phone screen was normal. No message. No map. No red dot. Just my usual apps. I deleted every dating app that night. I factory reset my phone the next morning. But sometimes late at night, my screen lights up for half a second. No notification sound. Just a flash. And for a split second, I swear I see those words again. Match confirmed. Location shared.